Okay. What's good, party people? This is According to Woods, and I have the honor and privilege of speaking with one of my childhood heroes. I mean, we're not that far in age, but I mean, holy hell. He is a former commentator for XPW, the former voice of Pro Wrestling Society X, and he is the host of Xtreme Memories on the Wrestling Chatter YouTube channel. He's the one and only Kris Kloss. Kloss, what's up, my man?
Hey, how you doing? First time here on According to Woods, and my pleasure. Of course, we've also worked together, done some interviews and podcasts for the Wrestling Chatter channel for missed opportunities and shows like that. Now I get to be on your show, so this is a treat. Thank you, sir.
No, the pleasure is all mine because we were kind of talking off air, but you, amongst many others, have paved the way for guys and gals like me wanting to be a part of the industry, but not necessarily lace up a pair of boots or, it kind of have to make a hot tag or anything like that. So you theoretically, you and one, oh gosh, you know that guy. Pat Hode, Larry Rivera,
Vera.
Chico. You guys paved the way, man.
Yeah, I guess so, Rivera. I guess so.
Yeah. No, man. So, dude,
Why'd you have
how
to
did
bring
you?
that guy up? Oh,
No.
oh.
Well, I guess it was a cold opening then, right? Not a cold day in hell, but a cold opening for sure.
That was actually the first time I'd seen him in a long time when we did that Cold Day in Hell show, and 2008. So I hadn't seen him. Remember, he left. For those of you that don't know what the hell we're talking about right now, myself and Larry Rivera were the TV hosts, play-by-play, color commentating guys for XPW. He came in. I started at day one, and he came in with Josh Lazy. He knew Josh Lazy for the whole music connection, Brujeria, and so he came in right before we went on TV. So I mean, we're talking a couple weeks, and this was like in April of 2000. So that's when he came in, and so we right off the bat, we didn't know prep, no nothing, and it was just I didn't even know him, he didn't know me, but it not at the beginning, but as time went on, we got chemistry. In the first we were a little stiff, but we were quickly playing off his thick Cuban accent, which he really doesn't have at all. But but um, but no, he and I did that, and then he left. An unharmonious parting of the ways with him and the Extreme Company. I would want to guess this was probably in late 2001, early 2002, right around that time. and the company went on till 2003. So I hadn't seen him since right around. I don't think I had seen him around that time. I remember I ran into him at a roller derby event in downtown LA, the Derby Dolls. I was there with Mike Hartsfield, who his wife was one of the promoters for the Derby Dolls, and Mike Hartsfield and I at the time. This was during the time of Wrestling Society X while it was on MTV, and I was living in downtown LA. So the Derby Dolls were right there in Little Tokyo.
Mm-hmm.
And so I'd go to the event. I just wanted to see the event, hang out with Mike. And then that's when we started brainstorming because he was also working at Big Vision Entertainment. I was PR manager, and he was jack of all trades. He was doing everything. That guy hustles. Let me tell you, Mike Hartsfield. And Mike Hartsfield was working in XPW in the later days in 02, 03. So he kind of did some different production things for the company at the end, but it wasn't until Big Vision Entertainment that his office was here, mine was right next to him, so we could hear each other, and we'd be shouting wrestling stuff and all that, through the office. But he was really him that kind of spearheaded, hey, Big Vision Entertainment owns XPW. Let's see what we can do with it. We're just sitting on it here. And sure enough, 2008 was Cold Day in Hell, and it was just one little conversation here, one little conversation there. All right, let's see what Kevin thinks. Kevin Kleinrock, who was basically VP of Big Vision. I think that was his role, but Houston Curtis was the guy that ran the company. So I seen Rivera there. He was doing the at the roller derby event back probably 2007, maybe 6, and we hadn't seen each other since probably 01, 02. And we just, hey man, great to see you and all this. And wow, haven't seen you for a while. It was short, but then when I saw him at Cold Day in Hell, that was the first time we worked together, since those days. But no, it was cool working back with him, and we wanted to get as many of the original players for Cold Day in Hell as we could. There were some new guys, and we had to get the East Coast guys, of course, and that's what you want to put on the DVD cover, which we did, like Sandman, Raven, Terry Funk. But then we infused that with Supreme, White Trash Johnny Webb, Chaos, Homeless Jimmy. So they were definitely all getting represented, and no one star was above the other. Like, let's say former ECW or WCW, Vampiro, another one. But that was the whole thing back in the day with XPW, is we didn't want to just have like, let's get these ECW stars in so we can have them to sell all the videos and merchandise. And then in the background, in the mid card or whatever you want to call it, is the homegrown West Coast guys, your Webbs, your Jimmys, your Supreme, your Chaos, Pogo the Clown. This was like, we were going to infuse all of them as one blended family, as opposed to having, here's your established stars from other televised companies, and here's our guys over here in these matches. That was the whole thing, is we needed to create that these guys are all going to be competing on the same level. And that was what was important, not only for the guys who we were doing that for on the West Coast, but in the long run, that's what gave the company credibility. Because if we were just hiring guys on, hey, these big stars are on our show, but they're not really part of this league. That was a mistake that a lot of promoters still to this day can make, but that was early on. We knew that was Rob and Kevin's vision, was to kind of, this has to be, it's not an indie show where we just hire some guys off and then here's your local talent. We knew we could not do that. And then there were some clashes. There were some egos. I'm not going to job to this guy. I don't even know who this guy is. Like, I was talking to Chaos, and I think it was Sabu that didn't want a job to, who is this kid Chaos guy? Well, you know what? He's up and coming, and he's in our company, and you're working for our company now. It's not just a one-off indie show. A lot of guys looked at it like that, and it maybe even did feel that way to some guys, but we had to hold true to our ground. In order, if we wanted any momentum, we had to start off the gate in that fashion.
That's tremendous. That's tremendous. And I mean, chiming in over on YouTube, the major domo of the wrestling chatter, George Hermosa, saying, "Oh, wow,
there he is."
Yes, he is. Looking in the shadows. And then we've got the Bad Blood, BJ Darden, going, yo, Kris never ages. Has always been the best commentator in SoCal, bar none. And I couldn't agree with you anymore. Shout out to Bad Blood. Hopefully his podcast is doing well. I may have contributed to I didn't kill the town, but I mean, there's some yeah.
You
But
got to be you got to
sorry,
be
bad blood.
you got to be
Yeah,
kidding me. According to Woods, you got to be kidding me.
usually I'm the nicest guy in town, but the one time I came on and I just I caused bedlam, as they say, around town. I killed the territories, but
Oh
hopefully
no.
it's back
Oh no.
running because those guys up there are literally, pardon the pun, killing it in the Pacific
Oh
Northwest. So, uh,
wow.
there you go.
So according to Woods, we actually we're talking earlier, and you and I we don't only hold like wrestling as a common denominator, but also music, and also we were both at a bunch of wrestling events, which we just pinpointed. One was like George just said, "Oh wow,
Oh wow!
women of wrestling." Yeah,
Yes,
Ico Pro, you
I
gotta
could.
want it. But no, we were at the forum back in what was that 2004, 2003,
It
two.
it had to be because my senior year at Inglewood High was '03, so it had to be '03,
That sounds
'02,
right
'03.
because XPW was like barely like we had our last show I think by then, but we didn't know it was done at that point. So I remember going to that Wow Women of Wrestling at the forum like almost in a scouting capacity. I was gonna maybe talk to some people and see if they were interested in coming, and because there was nobody I think was exclusive at that point. Like we could have these talks, yeah. So I
Yeah,
think that's what I was doing there, and I remember like when I was there, there were some people. I honestly can't remember who it was, but there were some people like that saw me as like, oh, what's the enemy doing here? And I was really just there also as a fan. I wanted to check it out. I wanted to see the forum. I was a big Laker fan in the Showtime Laker days, so I was just as much of a Magic Johnson Showtime Lakers guy as I was a wrestling guy as a kid. Those were my two babies right there. The forum for Lakers, the sports arena for wrestling. So so I remember why like I can't I think that's what pushed me over the edge to go do that was I want to see the forum. I haven't seen it since the Staples Center
the
and all that.
remodel. Yeah,
Yeah, just to see it again. I remember the championship banners and the jerseys were all still up. It's like the Staples Center they put new ones up. These are the originals. They're still here. Funny story. We did a and I'll comment on George's Ico Pro. Probably a couple people asked me after our last show on what is that other channel? The Wrestling Chomp or something like the
oh
evil
no,
wrestling.
no,
No,
no!
no, no, no.
Don't get it
The
here.
wrestling,
It's the Wrestling Chatter, and it's a
the
great
rest.
channel.
I'm
If you haven't
kidding.
already done so,
I'm
go ahead and
kidding.
subscribe on
Take it
YouTube.
easy. Take it easy. It's a joke. Okay. No, the wrestling chatter channel. Yeah, we did a show with like talking '90s wrestling with Lex Luger and so I Ico Pro, but got a couple comments about it on Facebook. I think it was Facebook, and oh, dude, Ico Pro, where'd you get that? So I'll tell you. But a funny story about the forum. When I did FCW, full contact wrestling, not the one from Florida, but the full contact wrestling. It
Yeah,
was brought in all the big lucha stars and all that, and did really well actually, crowd wise. But there's a lot of promise there, but nothing ever happened with them eventually. But we did a show at the forum in 2005, and that was awesome because we were at I think Rivera did that with me too. There were a lot of former XPW guys there. So that was the last time I'd seen Rivera. So I'm pretty sure Rivera and I did that together. But anyway, we were sitting there on the floor, like you could see the old scoreboard and all this, and all the Laker and the orange and yellow seats were still there, the old forum seats,
hmm
right? And I remember seeing all the jerseys up there and the Kings jerseys, all that too. But the Laker stuff, right? And I'm looking at the jerseys, and behind on this side are all their championship banners on the other wall, if you remember that. So I'm looking at the banners. I'm like, okay, so 72. They didn't have the Minneapolis banners at the forum. They put that one up at Staples, which I, by the way, think that those Minneapolis banners should get one each. I don't think all 5 should be on one banner and then LA one each. Because what in the Boston Garden, they have 6, whatever it is, 17 banners. We should have the 16 different banners. The Lakers, anyway, there's one banner at Staples that have all 5 Minneapolis titles, and then a separate banner for each LA. There should be, anyway, separate individual banners for those Minneapolis titles, I believe. Nonetheless, I digress. So we go to do that show at the Forum, and I'm looking up, and I know the Lakers history, and I see like, wait a minute, they got 72, 80, 82, 85, 87. Wait a minute, where's 88? Where's the 88 championship banner? Was gone. And I was like going around talking to security because I was like all marking out for the whole Forum and the Lakers and all that. And I actually asked someone like, dude, any chance I can get one of these yellow chairs? You know, no, I can't do that and all, you know. But I remember the guy said, like, I said, it wasn't there a 1988 banner. What happened to it? He goes, yep, some kids broke in and they climbed because if you remember the Forum in the back, the banners were against the wall, and the end banners, the seats kind of went up farther so you could kind of get on the back of the seat and touch that banner.
Yeah.
And that's what happened. So some people went in there, jacked it, and took the original 1988 Lakers championship banner. And I was like, what do they expect to do with that thing? They can't sell it. Like, they stole it, you know? Like, what do you – and where are they going to put it? That thing probably wouldn't even fit in someone's garage. Those things are huge, you know?
Yeah.
Yeah, so that's just a little tidbit for you LA people, historians, and wondering what, you know, all that good stuff, you know?
Well, and George was saying about WoW, it's like 03, 04, or oh wow, right? But just to kind of pull it together, Stephen Tatum, my buddy from Inglewood High, we both went to Inglewood High, graduated in the year 2003, and we were watching you and Pat O do your thing on XPW. But we actually had our high school commencement ceremony at the Forum, right?
Oh, no
So
way.
so as a 18-year-old kid, right? You might like, oh, I'm going to UCLA. Oh, I'm going to the military. Oh, I'm going to whatever. And then you got these big, I mean, they're bright, but ominous as an 18-year-old kid. And you're like, okay, I might have gone to this college, whatever, but like, that's what I have. I've got like Jerry West and Magic Johnson and Kareem Abdul-Jabbar fucking jerseys hanging over like our parents, essentially. So, like, what the fuck does a UCLA mean? We could have got into Harvard, and it would still be minuscule on the grand scheme of life to what we saw hanging in the jerseys before us. So, holy shit.
Totally. I agree. It was funny, like, when I was doing that show, the original Mil Mascaras, Pedro Aguario, and all these legends were there. And as cool as that was, like, Mil Mascaras, that, say what you want, man. Like, that's, as far as international, he's right up there with Antonio Inoki, Ric Flair.
Yeah.
Like, he might be the all-time, you know. And I remember, wow, you know, this is cool. And I'm like, nothing against him or anybody on that show, but like half of me was just marking out for all this Lakers stuff around me, you know. Like, I wasn't taking anything away from the wrestlers, but I'm just saying it was that much of a distraction.
Yeah.
That's pretty cool though that you had your ceremony there.
It was fucking scary as shit. That's what it was. Bloody hell. You know, and it's not just like we're just, you know, a lot of people say like, oh, the Lakers and whatever. Fucking Gretzky played there. It wasn't just Magic Johnson. Fucking Gretzky played there.
Yeah.
I mean, Lisa Leslie, the first season of the Sparks, first couple of seasons of the Sparks was at the Forum. So you're talking like 3 different WNBA, NBA, NHL, and all Hall of Famers made the Forum their home. Fuck me. This is creepy. I mean, fuck, you know?
I mean, that's one of the things too with, like, now that the Clippers ended up buying the Forum. I don't know. I mean, you grew up around or in Inglewood, right? Okay, so you know, like, what was it like 10 years? What was it? 10 years ago, the Chase Madison Square Garden bought the Forum.
Yes.
They renovated it to, like, I mean, epic proportions. Put a lot of money into renovating it, and it's a beautiful. I've been to many shows there. I got a good friend that works at KLOS, so he will every once in a while get some tickets, you know, and it's the best venue now for sound in LA. I mean, I will say the best venue for sound in LA though was the LA Sports Arena. You
Was
asked you asked Pearl Jam, you asked Bruce Springsteen, these bands, yeah, these bands amongst others, when they came to LA, they would opt out of playing at Staples Center to play at the LA Sports Arena for the acoustics. And Bruce Springsteen once said, "In on the planet, and this guy's been everywhere, that was his favorite arena to play in acoustic wise." And you watch WrestleMania 7, WrestleMania 2, and you hear the echo of the fans. Pay attention to that. It sounds a little bit different from your normal arena that they would tape at. Something about the LA Sports Arena. And I was actually at the last ever show there, Bruce Springsteen, and he was very emotional. And he got on the mic between the songs right before the end. He goes, "Folks, you know what? This beautiful place." And it's funny because most people there like didn't care. Angelinos, in a weird way, didn't care about that place. But here's Bruce Springsteen telling Angelinos, "Hey, you guys have one of the best venues, and you know what? They don't make them like this anymore." And that was the last show. And it was a sad, kind of bittersweet night, you know. And then I was there too because I growing up, going to all the wrestling, and then one of the probably my top 3 moments I've ever been a part of was being at the sports arena. The other one I was talking to George before, and it has to be also when I called a match with Roddy Piper only weeks before he passed away, his last ever show. But being at the sports arena is up there. But anyway, the forum is Chase bought it, and then he was holding on to it, and they had an agreement with the city of Inglewood. "I'm going to fix the forum up, but we can't have a competing venue around it." Okay, Inglewood said, "Absolutely. The forum's becoming a dinosaur. Let's do something with it." And this was all long before SoFi Stadium was even talked about.
thought of, yeah.
Yeah, broken ground. So when SoFi went in, Chase already had it. Then the Clippers wanted to move near there, and Ballmer ended up paying ridiculous amount of money just because to end that feud with the Knicks owner. So now it's like Steve Ballmer says, "Oh, don't worry, the forum's not going anywhere. We're going to build our arena like a block away or 2, whatever." But that's one of those things where I'll believe it when I see it. I just feel like they're trying to make the people feel good right now historically, but like that could change at any time. I think there'll be a little bit of a pushback for the forum being torn down versus the sports arena, but I think it'll still. It's very possible that will happen.
No, 100%. Well, you know, I've got a funny like Bruce Springsteen story at the sports arena. Well, I think I was working right after my youngest son was born. I was working security, like event staff, and like no, so the first 2 days of my employment there was the last 2 days of Genesis's
Oh
reunion
wow!
tour, right, at the Hollywood Bowl, right? And that was amazing. The next week, it's Springsteen and the E Street Band at doing 2 nights. I think the 29th and 30th of that year, 07. And it was the Halloween show and whatever. And the funny story, the reason why Bruce, I mean, of course the acoustics were incredible, but Bruce and the E Street Band had actually played in support of the Rising record, right? In the early 2000s, right?
Yeah.
And somebody in security checked Bruce for his ID. Like they wanted to card him. And he was like, and Bruce is not one to go, he says Americana as it gets, right?
Right.
And they were like, "No, we can't let you in, sir." His name was literally in the
Yeah,
fucking
yeah,
marquee, like
right.
in LED, like what, 150 feet wide and shit. So yeah, and he was just like, "Fuck it, I don't care. As long as this place is still here, I'm gonna play here."
That
And
was the
that's
Forum or the Sports Arena?
that was the sports arena.
Sports Arena, right? Yeah, he would only
Yeah,
play there. So that's
yeah,
amazing. It's amazing how much like like it. So many people have been to that venue, but it takes like only a certain few to realize what's up with this venue and how important it is. Yet like thousands of people went there, and most people just take whatever's given to them. Most
yeah,
people are sheep, and like this is the place to go. Okay, it's as long as it's made up to look new and flashy, it must be better. But it takes a guy like, and again, remember Springsteen and Eddie Vedder too. Also, Pearl Jam. He was the guy that appreciated it,
yeah,
and a few other artists, not just them. But but they were. It takes people that these guys have been to every arena in the world, and they're saying this about the LA Sports Arena. It was sad when that I was upset. I'll do a backstory real quick. I
yeah.
was
No,
at that
please.
I was at that last show, and I remember looking up online historic monuments and buildings like that are protected so that they can't be turned down.
Yeah,
So the city council, I found this out. My friend who was a lawyer, that was one of my neighbors in my own condominium in downtown, I contacted him about this. I said, "Hey, I might have something for you. This could be a high profile case." And I told him, I said, "Look, they want to tear down the LA Sports Arena, but this might be a historic landmark." He looked everything up. He said, "Okay, well, look, the Republican Democratic convention were there. They have plaques in there about John F. Kennedy, this and that. And I don't know if Nixon went there as well. I know Kennedy did, but
right.
but okay, so check this out. It was found out. Okay, when I was there the last show, I remember where that plaque was. They had the whole thing like a facade wall was put over that plaque. All right. Now,
Right, yeah.
when I told the lawyer about this a few days after the concert, before I told him that, he was looking up the history. He says, "Well, you know what? I might be interested in this. Let me look into this." And he got back to me. He said, "What a lot of these venues do is they'll cover up. This is before I told him what I saw. They'll cover up any historical aspects of the building, so that the city inspection that come through, they're more likely to green light the demolition." And
Fuck.
sure enough, right? And I remember telling him, like, you're not going to believe it, but I walked by that the night of the show, and I was looking for it, and I remember, like, I know this is where it was. And you could see it was like almost like a fake wall was put over the John F. Kennedy plaque and all that.
What?
And I remember I was back there at the sports arena, the Coliseum, like I was in the area, and I went to the office and I talked to the commissioner, and he's, well, no, I'm sorry, I asked for the commissioner. Oh, he's not in right now. Let me give you his card. I said, "Yeah, what's this about?" And I said, "Well, I just kind of played it off like, well, I was doing shows here. I wasn't lying. I didn't say when those shows were. They were a while ago. But we're looking to do something at the sports arena, this and that." I'm like, "Okay, well, that's we're not doing any more events here. We can talk about the new venue coming in later, which is Bank of America Soccer Stadium, or whatever it's called, Bank of California." but
Yeah,
um,
yeah.
but the lawyer, he was looking into it more, and he just needed a whole team at that point. But he also had his plate full of other stuff, and it just didn't go anywhere. But I literally did that. I went down there, kind of researched it, investigated it, because I think things were a little below board and a little shady as far as them greenlighting the destruction of the sports arena. And sure enough, we did a little research and found a couple things, just never went through with it. And he wasn't able to do that. Who knows what would have happened anyway? You know, I mean, maybe nothing would have happened type thing, but it was kind of interesting, but it was almost cringe. Like, gosh, imagine being able to save the sports arena, but it didn't happen. You know.
Oh, especially, I mean, with your kind of history, I mean, that was a staple of XPW, you know, the sports arena. And
Hmm.
I mean, that's got to be kind of cool, you know, having seen shows there and wrestling events yourself as a fan, and then now working it, you know, as the lead, you know, commentator for this uprising, you know, wrestling promotion. That had to be cool.
Yeah, that was the best. I mean, that was like I said, that was probably one of my favorite moments ever that I've experienced with being in wrestling. Whether it was MTV, television, or XPW back east, and all those stars, like that one, I don't know where I'd rank it, but that was definitely like my Mount Rushmore of favorite moments that I've been involved with. Was definitely like going into that ring. Oh, there's where I was sitting for WrestleMania 7. There's where I was sitting. You know, I mean, that was, and I wasn't the only one. There was a lot of us that felt that way. You know, I was not the only one. So sad to see it go. And again, aside from the wrestling, all those great artists that appreciated that building, really sad. I think that the sports arena in LA was just didn't get the love because it was there in '59, and then only 8 years later the Forum came in.
Hmm.
So people just didn't have this nostalgia for it because it was only there for a few years, and the Lakers weren't winning championships in the sports arena. They were winning just before in Minneapolis, and then they would build a team up in the Forum. And funny, their jerseys switched to yellow and purple in the Forum because the sports arena was the same colors as Minneapolis, but just said Los Angeles. So they really got
Right.
their own identity in LA when they went to the Forum. So people didn't there was a small chunk of people that grew up with the sports arena, but not many. And it was for a short amount of time. And back then, my mom's side of the family, they're born and raised in Santa Monica, right? So my family goes back in Southern California, and they would go. People back then went to Dodger games. It wasn't as common to go to basketball back then as it was to baseball. That was like what everybody did back then. So you know, the sports arena just didn't get the love like Dodger Stadium, like the Forum, like the Rose Bowl, like the LA Coliseum. It was just kind of like it was had its little moment with the Lakers, then it was done. Oh, and then the lowly Clippers come in for a little while, like the sports arena, you know.
Yeah, no, 100%. Which I mean, I gotta ask, like, I mean, you know, even before getting involved in the industry, I mean, you were kind of like it was actually funny, kind of going through like the WWE network, and you know, because we would talk, you know, after the wrestling chatter with tape and whatever, and as George Mimosa says, it's the wrestling chomp. Okay,
Oh,
I guess it's French.
it's
Oh,
not the
Chomp,
wrestling. It's not the wrestling chomp. Don't get your feelings hurt. It was a
Chomp.
joke. It's the wrestling chatter
It is the wrestling chatter. No, but I mean,
channel.
you were
The
a fan
wrestling
long
chatter
before
channel.
the wrestling chatter.
Yeah,
Oh
channel.
fuck, I fucked that up. I fucked that up. The
Okay.
that was the rest. That was the Inglewood High School education.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, yeah.
All right.
No, but I mean, when when did you get bit by the wrestling bug? Because I know, I mean,
Wow.
I remember I was like watching Tom and Jerry, you know, and then my mom turned on and it was Bret Hart versus Randy Savage Saturday night's main event, and my world was changed and nothing else mattered. So I know you had to have one of those epiphanies. So at
Yeah.
what point did that occur?
Okay. I think first off, I was watching wrestling a lot. Like my dad would have it on. My grandpa, his dad, would make fun of myself and my dad for watching this phony baloney wrestling. You guys know it's phony baloney, right? So he was from the
It's
old.
still real to me, damn it.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. but that was the thing. Like he was so old school. Like to the point where like kayfabe, like, hey, you guys know it's you know. But my dad, I remember, had it on early on. Like he was not like a huge fan, but he would just watch it, you know. And I remember we had, was it on TV, Select TV or something like that? Um, we were getting like a free, because we didn't have cable when I was a kid. We did not have cable, but I remember we had something where we had like a satellite free trial for a long time. Like it was in an apartment we were living in, and we had a free trial, and we were getting everything. We were getting AWA, we were getting World Class, we were getting, of course, NWA, WWF. So I remember early on, like seeing a lot of the stuff, right? That I normally wouldn't have seen in my own house because we never had cable, right? We would just get whatever was on Channel 11, basically, and Saturday Night's Main Event, whatever. But I remember I would watch it, and then if it was a wild match, I remember the Texas match, like the Boogie Woogie Man chasing the Freebirds around the sportatorium, like, and there was blood. And I remember my sister and I were like, "Oh my gosh, whoa!" And my dad was kind of into it too. But I remember that was an early memory of that. And then like this is the real stuff, like WWF, okay, but this one's real, you know. And then as we fast forward throughout the years, I was still watching it, but I didn't get like truly bitten by the bug to where like, oh, now I have to go to an event until probably 88. I don't know what transpired for me to like want to go to an event. I don't know. But it was about right around 88 where I just wanted, I had to go. And that was at the sports arena, of course. But the wrestling bug to where I wanted to be a part of the business was, my family and I, we went to wrestling, and I want to say maybe 89, 90. And we were all driving home, and my mom was like, "Hey, are you okay? You know, you all right?" Yeah, why? You know, and oh, I don't know. You weren't, seemed like you were not into the wrestling tonight. It's like, what do you mean? And she's like, well, you were just looking at the people. And I remember like that was the moment where I was like, oh, you know what? And I was looking at the people because I remember watching the wrestling at the sports arena and seeing the packed arena back then, and then thinking of all the Laker games we went to, the packed arena. And I remember looking at the people at the sports arena thinking everyone here is watching this event exactly the same way that they're watching a Laker game or a sporting event. And I was just so captivated by that. Like, this is a work, but they're watching it just like they're watching a sporting event. And so as a little kid, I saw that, and I was like more enthralled with that than even the action in the ring that night. You know, so my mom kind of brought that to my attention when I was a kid. I didn't maybe had the awareness to pick that up yet. Maybe I did. I don't know. But either way, that was the moment where I was like, I want to be on the other side of that curtain. You know, I want to be part of what's making these people do this, you know, and of course myself as well. I was caught up in that too, but I just kind of, I put on like Roddy Piper in that moment. I put on the sunglasses, and everyone around me, you know what I'm saying? So, and anyway, that was the moment where I was like, I was just so in love with this whole industry, and I already was a fan, so I'm already just being a fan and loving that part of being a part of it, you know. But this
No one.
kayfabe was so important, and it's a
Oh,
little bitter.
yeah.
It's a little bittersweet right now because look, cat's out of the bag. Everybody's talking. I kind of held off for a long time doing interviews like this because I really was like, I don't care. I'm not going to say nothing. And you know, it's hard to do that now. So it's sweet, bittersweet, sweet that we were able to talk about these things. I love it. But the bitter part is this, us talking about means that this kayfabe thing is not held on to in high regard anymore.
Well, you know what? I mean, Kids Fizz is a live, kid, so don't even trip. And I mean, if Arn Anderson has a podcast, a weekly one at that, I think
Right.
you're fine. I think you're fine.
Everybody, yeah. It's. I don't think there's anybody anymore. Like, like the last ride, Undertaker. He was like one of the last ones to. It's just the way it is now. So, but then I do appreciate some of the things that Al Snow says, who I met. Gosh, can't remember when we. I can't remember, but I kind of yes and no with his school of thought, which is, look, in the 1950s, everyone knew it was a work.
Right.
In Origin Stories, everyone knew it was a work. So, what do you mean kayfabe's dead? It's not dead, So there's something to be said for his thinking right there. That look, it's still thriving, it's still alive, it's still bigger than better than ever in some ways, but it's not what we're talking about right now. I don't think a kid is going to go to an event and look at the Staples Center crowd like a Laker crowd as much as when we were growing up. I think they presented it as such a sport back in those
Right.
times. They don't necessarily present it as a sport anymore. It's full on entertainment now, which it always has been, but the way it was presented back then, you
Presented.
felt like you were going to a sporting event.
Yeah, I mean the intent, right? And context is key, right? And I mean Steve Tatum, he's saying like he's loving all this California history, and I do too. Yeah, shout out to Steve and chatting on the wrestling chatter. That's what George, uh, me and Kloss, and I mean Steve Kaufman, a bunch of other luminaries, Flobo Boys. Literally, if you're missing your AfterBuzz fix right now during quarantine, head over to the Wrestling Chatter where there's shows like Missed Opportunities and I mean a litany of other things. So I don't know if you aren't subscribed, but you should be subscribed to the Wrestling Chatter on YouTube. So check that out. And I mean, Kloss is a host of Xtreme Memories. So I'm just saying.
Okay? You talking
Yeah,
to me?
that
Hey,
guy. Yeah, there. Yeah.
Oh wait, I did the wrong way. I'm sorry.
Sorry.
StreamYard, the StreamYard.
Hey, I thought this
I
was
like I'm
you know,
ignoring you. I'm
you were
ignoring you
just
now. Get
talking
out
about
of here.
kayfabe, good sir, and you broke mine. There goes the
Oh,
third wall, fourth
oh,
wall, whatever the hell.
oh.
No, but I mean,
Yeah.
okay, talk in terms of legendary LA venues, right? Because we talked at length about the sports arena, the forum, right? But I mean, that wasn't the only one, right? I mean, I just found out, and I always knew about it after reading Lou Thesz's autobiography, Hooker, right? That there was the Hollywood Legion Stadium, the site of the very first $100,000 gate in pro wrestling history. Baron Michel Leon against Lou Thesz for the world title, right?
Yeah.
And I knew that it existed. I knew Marigold Arena existed, but I didn't know the stadium was actually right across the street from Happy Times at Davy Wayne's, like right behind I think it's the Fonda, isn't it? No, no,
Yeah, the Fonda. That's
yeah,
like at the end of the very end of Hollywood Boulevard. Or yeah, like toward the south end going out of Hollywood there.
like Selma, yeah, like
Uh-huh.
Hollywood and Selma almost,
Is
right?
it Selma or Gower? B, you're right. I don't know if I've probably seen footage from those events. I mean, that was the old Hollywood wrestling territory. And that was a prominent territory back in the day because it was the advent of television in the 50s. It was a lot of, I mean, that was, if you want to think about it, Hollywood wrestling was the first major big time territory because it had all that television exposure back in the day. Not the only one that did, but it was very prominent. It had everything already set up for itself just being in Hollywood. So, people talk about wrestling on the East Coast, in the South, but people really forget about the history of wrestling in Southern California. I mean, big time. Now, and the West Coast too. I mean, there's Portland wrestling, Vancouver and all that. But, and of
Cow
course,
Palace.
yeah, the Cow Palace, right? Bay Area, and I mean, I know it's in a way it's two different worlds, but also just in Baja, you know, and TJ and all that, a lot of history there. So there's so much history out here, but it's like for whatever reason, people always traditionally think of the East Coast or the South when it comes to professional wrestling. Maybe a little bit like, uh, you know, St. Louis, places like that. Which in a
Yeah,
way, it's still in. It's kind of that's kind of considered the South still. But um, you know, there's so much Baron Leone, Gorgeous George. I mean, really, the first major star in wrestling was Gorgeous George, and we argue from the wrestling chatter, and I argue about like we talk about the Mount Rushmore of wrestling, and people want to say, okay, you got Hulk Hogan, Stone Cold, The Rock, and whatever, Ric Flair. It's like, wait a minute, we gotta. If you're talking Mount Rushmore, when the United States Mount Rushmore was established, they didn't just say the most current popular presidents. They went all the way to George Washington to whatever was there. So you have to encompass everything, I think, if you're going to make a Mount Rushmore professional wrestling, my opinion. And and I think in that case, Gorgeous George, I mean, look at George Washington, Gorgeous George,
yes,
first with the blonde hair. So it's like, how do you not put a guy like Gorgeous George on there? And then if you go through the times, there's guys like San Martino, Luthez, like you could pick whoever to, yeah, to write the Luthez
says.
press, which is still used, which I love. But you know, you have to, it's very difficult to pick a Mount Rushmore. I mean, it's very, very difficult.
Yeah, I mean, well, George Hermosa says George Hermosa is the biggest star in SoCal, and he
So wait a
belongs
minute. So
on.
wait a minute. So wait a minute. There's Mount Rushmore with George Washington. There's the pro wrestling with Gorgeous George. What the hell Mount Rushmore is George Hermosa on? Give me a
I,
break.
you'll definitely have to find out on the Wrestling Chatter channel where we do top sevens, the second best. I mean, just a litany of wrestling stuff, and I mean, there's even a podcast, a full on podcast with former WWE Women's and TNA Knockouts champion, one Lisa Marie Verone. You know, and somebody who's been on
Oh,
this very show, Mariah Moreno, the bloodthirsty vixen, hearts to Kris. So
right back at you, baby.
yeah, Team Bloodthirsty Vixen. There you go. Yeah, but George is saying the Mount Rushmore of Georges.
Oh, well,
So,
George Hermosa. Actually, you know, we kid around a lot, but speaking of all this SoCal history, is kind of interesting. George Hermosa, his family goes way back here in Southern California, and they're the ones that came up with like the whole Hermosa Beach area with the Hermosas. I am kidding.
whoa. I was gonna say there's a S and a C, but
Right.
I digress.
Yeah, yeah.
Uh, Amanda is what George is saying. We're not gonna. They were gonna extract that one. John Tolos, so part of the Tolos brothers. I mean, and you know what? It's funny that you're mentioning, you know, the how sad it is to have the sports arena gone, right? But for me, I'm all like, I mean, is it worse that it's gone, or is it worse that it's still here and repurposed, like a Hollywood Legion Stadium, like a
Forum,
the Grand Olympic Auditorium, which is now, if
a
you go on
Korean
the,
church.
yeah, I cry. I mean, nothing
Well,
against the Korean church, but
I'll
I'm
say
just
this.
saying,
It's sad to see that, but I still would rather the sports arena still be there and convert it into something, because at least the Grand Olympic is still there. And you never know what they can do with it later on. They could very easily, the seats are all still on top and behind the pulpit. They can easily, that church, just like the Inglewood mega church went under or stopped using the forum, it could very easily that this Korean church stopped using the forum. And look, by then, how old is the Olympic Auditorium going to be? At that point, nobody is going to want to tear it down. People are going to like this nostalgia. All the hipsters are going to want to go there because it's like, whoa, this old place. And that place may be like an amazing landmark in the future if it's still there, knowing that this thing is over 100 years old. It's built only for boxing and wrestling, no basketball, no hockey, or whatever. And that's what it's built for. It's built for wrestling. That's why it's a
Wrestling.
square venue. Just
Well, there was I think it also facilitated the indoor cycling for that year's Olympics.
yeah, and they did do roller derby there too back in the day.
Yes, absolutely.
Yeah, the LA roller derby. But nonetheless, when that building was built, they converted it for concerts too. But the way it's set up, when you go to a regular, like the sports arena, the Forum Staples, it's an oval shape for the hockey and basketball court, and the Olympic Auditorium is completely squared on all four sides, perfectly fit for a combat ring, and that was for the Olympics, for the boxing. That's what it was built for. I believe the 23 Olympics, and so we're coming up on 100 years for this venue.
Yeah.
I mean, this is an old venue, and look, the LA Sports Arena was considered super old, built in 1959. This is 1923. Maybe you want to check that, but I'm pretty sure it was
25, 25.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. But yeah, so we're coming up on 100 years, and again, if we thought the sports arena was old and the Forum was 1967, that's considered old. Give me a break, man, like that. So no, to answer your question, it would be sad, like the Olympic, and to see it going through this weird transformation. But at the end of the day, it's like, all right, it's still there. There's still hope, dude. The sports arena, it's gone. It's gone. It's gone. There's nothing.
It is. No, 100%. Now, Ruben Garcia. Shout out to Ruben. And I'm sorry I missed it. It was buried under the Rushmore of Georges. But he's asking, what do you remember about Global Extreme Wrestling in Lancaster?
Yeah. So this was a promotion that myself and referee Danny Manchichi Ramirez started up. Danny Ramirez, there you go. Danny, there's the ref dance. Danny Ramirez, of course, was ref at XPW. He was referee for Wrestling Society X. One of my dear, longtime personal close friends. Just actually talked and saw him last night. Hung out in good old Pacoima, California, and we actually started up a wrestling company that was going to be the farm league for Wrestling Society X. We didn't start it up for that purpose, though. Danny's family owned a nightclub in downtown LA called La Hacienda Real. It was in the basement of the Eastern Columbia building on Broadway and 9th. If you know that historic turquoise Eastern Predator Part 2, right?
Yeah.
So his family, his dad had the whole basement back in the early 2000s. This was before the revitalization of downtown LA. So when we went down there, we'd go down there after shows to his nightclub at the sports arena, go down there after shows. And it was dicey. Just parking across the street to walk into that building was dicey back then. And I ended up living like 4 blocks away 4 years later on 9th and Flower. I used to live right across from the Ralph's supermarket on 9th and Flower. Yeah.
Yeah.
So that was right down the street. But back in 2000, 2001, like that was a dicey. Nobody was downtown at night. People worked in the day and there was a ghost town at night. So he had that. The family ended up getting rid of that, selling it, and then buying a nightclub, a sports bar and grill out in Lancaster. Foresight, if you could only see the future, they totally regret it, unfortunately, because downtown, boom. Imagine owning the entire basement of the Eastern now. I mean, it's a touchy subject that the Ramirez's don't like talking about, and I get it. Nonetheless, he had a sports bar and grill Lancaster. So we would do wrestling shows in the outdoor patio / parking lot and drape it off with chairs and bleachers. And we got a ring, and we called it Global Extreme Wrestling, just name we came up with. Kind of a tribute to GWF, I guess. We wanted to be on that level. And so we went up there, we filmed commercials, and back then it was like right at the end of this era where we took the commercials to the cable companies. The cable companies aired them during Raw, SmackDown and or yeah, I don't know if SmackDown was on cable then, maybe it was, but all the cable wrestling shows we would air these commercials on. And unlike LA, people see something like this up in Lancaster and they're all in because there's nothing to do up there. LA's great to run events, but it's very competitive. You know, every night there's something to do in LA other than COVID, no, but normally there's
Yeah.
something to do. So yeah, something to do every night. So we ran shows in late 2005. What we would do is Danny would have the monitors in the sports bar set up. We would hold the events on WWE pay-per-view days. So you come to our wrestling show. After the show, you stick around, you watch the pay-per-view for free, and then they made money in their sports bar for the food, the drinks, and all that. So as we're doing the show, we did a couple shows, and I remember I'm at El Rodeo hanging out up in Lancaster with Danny and the whole crew, and I get a call that night. Houston Curtis calls me. He said, Kris, I want to let you know that we just got Wrestling Society X's picked up on MTV. And I just want you to know, I want you to be the announcer. And so I was, of course, on cloud nine. We were already sitting there celebrating, drinking. And I'm like, well, now the party really starts, right? So, yeah. So that was tremendous news. And I said, thank you. And so what are you up to? And I told him where I was and what we're doing up there in Lancaster at the time with Global. So we were just talking briefly about, well, this is great. This is perfect. Do you mind? What do you think of like using your shows to develop guys for Wrestling Society X? Absolutely. Let's do this. You know, it's unofficial stuff. You know, we'll record it for who knows what. It looked rinky dink, right? But who cares, right? It was just developmental. So that was the plan. That was the plan at the time. It was unofficial, right? We just kind of talked about it. But unfortunately, as you know, WSX did last only one season, and then they sold and bought another venue, the Ramirez. So that was the end of El Rodeo. But we had a fun run up there. It was a lot of fun doing that, and we just used our knowledge, what Danny and I had already learned working in XPW, working at Big Vision, and we just kind of did it on our own, and it was decent. You know, we had all the Supreme was up there. The Young Bucks wrestled for us. I mean, even name them. Anybody was up there working those shows. You know, didn't pay much, but it paid. You know, I didn't let anybody go without getting money. You know, I remember I was always good about that because I know the feeling, and I've been screwed many times. You know, and I was like, I'm not going to promise you a lot, but I will pay you. You know, so
Something. There you go. Hot dogs and drink at the very least. And Ruben said, I was there. I was in the middle. It was in the middle of nowhere. Good times though, you know?
Yeah, it was on West. I want to say 90th and Avenue J, West or East or West J or West 90th and Avenue J, El Rodeo Sports Bar and Grill. That place is still there. And I was working up in Lancaster auction. I had an auctioneer. And we had a charity event. And when I was done with the event, I'm like, let me see if I can find this place. That was a couple of years ago. It's like, wow, this place still looks like it's in the middle of nowhere. But again, I mean, in the middle of BF Egypt, you know? So I remember even though it was in the middle of nowhere, it was, again, when you're in Lancaster, a place like that, and you put something on TV, a commercial, I mean, it was like the Oscars were in town for the folks up there. Like, people came in droves, and it was like, oh my gosh, look at all these people in the middle of cold ass December. Like, it was cold that first show, man. And it was like, oh, it was in the middle of nowhere. He's right, man. You know? But no, those shows were like, there was something in the works for those shows, but from WSX fizzling out and then Danny and his family fizzling out of that, it was on its way, but we did what we could while we were there, you know.
And you got to make the most of every opportunity. And one person that's doing that is the king of Hermosa Beach, one George Hermosa. And he says, I mean, with all of this money from Hermosa Beach, let's buy the Grand Olympic Auditorium. I'm
Yeah,
with it.
yeah. Let's. I know from all the money. When is the Battle of the Beaches going to happen between George Hermosa and Jason Redondo, though?
Hmm.
Right? The Battle of the
Book it.
South Bay.
Hey, you know what? We
That,
might get.
that you guys got to work together now. Redondo versus Hermosa, and maybe hold it in Manhattan Beach or something, where neutral ground. I don't know.
There we go. I mean, or at the La Brea Tar Pits, and then it would be blacker than the beach. Never mind. It
I got
doesn't
a
work.
friend. I got a friend. I got a friend, neighbor of mine, Bert Zuma. I'm gonna have him start training, and there'll be a three-way dance.
Oh, you said Zuma, not Buck Zumhoff, right?
No,
Because
Bert Zuma.
okay, because
Yeah,
statute of limitations, it gets dark. Yeah.
yeah. We
Oh,
don't. Yeah, that's. I think that's the word. One of the. Not. I don't want to stick on this, but that's maybe the worst story ever in pro wrestling,
yes.
possibly.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well,
Let's
enough of that,
pivot.
though.
Let's
We're not
pivot.
going to
Get the
put.
fuck
We're not
out of
going to
here.
put that. We're not going to say that name and put anybody over like that. So.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, this is the only rock and roll that
That's
matters to me
right,
in
baby.
wrestling.
That's right. That's
Damn
right,
right.
man.
Yeah, and Ruben said, it was next to a trailer park,
Yeah.
wasn't
I mean, for all intents and purposes, it was a trailer park.
it? Hey,
Yeah, Ruben, I am not going to argue you. You are correct. I mean, remember, I don't know if you remember, but the stepfather and the redheaded stepchild, they came to work a couple shows. But I remember John Weber when he came out and he came there for the first time and his eyes lit up. He goes, "This is perfect. This
this
is
is really,
perfect."
yes.
Yeah. I was like, well, if anyone's going to fit in here, it's you guys. And they played it up. They did some promos back where like some old screen doors were hanging off of a dilapidated abandoned trailer. And the kid was inside whining stepchild and came out with like nacho cheese and beer. Like, and you stay in there with the belt. Oh, dude, those guys are
Oh,
funny. Those guys are hilarious, dude. They were one of my favorite. John Weber, stepfather, he's a comedian. He did the X show on FX Network.
yeah, yeah.
Dude, this guy is legit. And then so he brought that into his character. I think for the indie scene, that was one of the funniest. Like I was like, I'm on board with you guys. And then Zach as the redheaded stepchild, dude, it was perfect.
Weber's awesome. I first met him. I think Sean Black's first. I it was before it was Compton Mania, but it was God, I can't remember the promotion, but Sean Black, he wanted to have an Inglewood based indie promotion. In the landscape of the California indie scene. So he had done that, and John Weber, I believe, did commentary for that first event. So that's how I know John Weber. John Weber's a good dude.
Oh, he's a really nice guy. Yeah, he's a good guy. He's one of the good ones, man. Yeah, for sure. He was a humble guy too in the beginning because he did the X show was like a an offshoot of the Man show back in the day
Yeah,
for Comedy Central, and the X show came on FX Network. But it was basically the same thing with comedians on there. And John Weber was one of the hosts for this show, and he was all in all sorts of commercials. He did stand up, and then he would come to the XPW shows at the sports arena, and then he just was curious to get in wrestling, but he did not come in at all with like, hey, you know who I am, this. He right away when the show ended, he followed Zach and low key Steve and Mock Radledge and all those guys, the ring crew, and he just like started taking the ring apart. He didn't, and he was like ring crew and Leroy ring crew guy, and he just wanted to blend in with those guys. He didn't ask for any special favors, nothing, you know. And it was
yeah,
like this guy's an awesome guy, man. Which is what I did in the beginning too, like SECW in the early days of XPW at the Country Club. That's until we got a full on crew when we had to get back and do wraparounds and all that. We were the ring crew. You know, we were
Yeah.
totally the ring crew. And then
Uh,
when they needed us too, even later on, like, I mean, if we're running late or something, like, hey, pick up a wrench, get going. It doesn't. Don't take yourself too damn seriously around here at all.
no, absolutely. And George did correct me as he often does on the Wrestling Chatter. It was Sean Black's Amped Up show. Yes, that's
Okay.
that's exactly the show. And Ruben Garcia pulls up a particular memory. I'll read some of it. I do remember that there was this old wooden horse thing that Angel
Yes,
found and had fun with it, and I could only imagine what fun that
there was
person had with it.
there was an old wooden like rocking horse that Angel like it was called he called it the Pink Pony or something like that. Like, we're gonna do the Pink Pony interview segment, but you know who came up with that was Dynamite D. Dynamite D was walking by and he's like, "Hey, what do you think we can do with this, and that?" So I mean, of all the things he was gone through in the business, he was still like, and this great wrestler, he was still just that moment of him being a kid, like, "Oh, we could use this in wrestling," like it was just great. And then that transition to, well, how about Angel? And then Angel took it from there. But that was all started. I was right there when they were talking about all that. Just we were laughing about, oh, what we could do with this, and that was D that catapulted the idea to use that horse. And then Angel, like, I think it was the Pink Pony interview segment or something like that. Yeah, he was there too. Like, everybody was up there. That because we were all in contact with one another, like Danny, myself, and everybody on the indie scene and former XPW guys. So we were just like, it was only a couple of years after XPW ended, so the iron was still hot in many ways to do something with all these guys. And these guys, a lot of them just wanted to work and
Yeah,
do stuff. And at the time, as in the middle of nowhere as it looked, we were going to get bleachers to at least like the ECW arena. They would just put those bleachers around to make that
right.
small building look good. And I remember, actually, I went to Osh Hardware and I came back with Danny one night. And I remember we were up all night on the telephone pole, putting these hooks, screwing them into the wooden pole and stringing a cable with the come along just so we can hang banners down, like the two banners you see in wrestling above the ring. We did all that just so we could do that. And then we were going to get some bleachers just so it could look somewhat presentable. Because at the time we were going to film it, and who knows, like, if Big Vision were able to like put that on DVD, even if it wasn't like one of their premiere DVDs, we had the potential to do that at the time. So, I mean, we were putting our work into making that happen for sure.
No, 100%. And I mean, the hanging banners from telephone poles. So essentially, you guys were doing Hotline Bling way before Drake ever had any inclination of doing same. He's probably on Degrassi, and you guys were doing Hotline Bling like literally
All right.
15 years before, you know. So
Yeah. I just remember we had, okay, here's the ring. We were watching some stuff on TV. Okay, I remember what we did. We put two hooks. There was a telephone pole and a tree. There's a tree, and then the ring would be in the middle. So we hung a cable, tightened it up, and then from the restaurant we pulled the cable back so the cable could be like a triangle, so the banners could hang like just like on TV. The two like the angled up, and then we were like, okay, now we got to put some bleachers. It doesn't have to be big bleachers, just enough to where the people are stacked high, and put, instead of on the floor, put those around the ring and be the same amount of people, basically, kind of like those WCW worldwide tapings from,
yes,
yeah, like they would just be stacked so high straight up, but it looked decent versus just everyone on the floor. So we talked, I believe, some bleacher rental places, but this was right toward the end when it was like it was done. But 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 yeah, Ruben, thank you, man. This is I haven't talked about GXW in a while, so this is kind of cool. Thank you, man.
I mean, he kind of follows it up. Who owns the GXW tapes now?
I want to say, I don't know if the right word is own, but I think Devin Lafebre, I don't know, Lafebre, Devin, good old Devin from WSX XPW camera guy, that's helped me out a lot. He was also worked at Big Vision, and he recorded everything. So I'm sure if anyone has it, it's him. You know, they were never distributed officially through Big Vision, so they're just kind of raw footage now. I probably will ask him where, if he has them, and if he doesn't, if he knows their whereabouts. Unfortunately, this is one of those things in wrestling, like, I don't even know. You know, I was a part of it. Danny, it was basically our thing, and I don't even know where these tapes are. You know, so
Yeah, you know, it's funny because I don't know what it is
your
about.
audio, hey, your audio is kind of like transistor radio right now. I don't know if that's me or you.
Oh, you can hear me?
I can hear you fine. It's just the stereo dropped out. It's
Stereo?
like an AM radio right now.
Well,
All right, much better. Yeah, there you go.
okay,
Yeah.
cool. All right. No, so I mean, it's funny because
back again. You did whatever you did.
plug it in. All right. How about that?
Better. Yep,
All
much
right.
better.
Sweet. No, and it's a weird thing with wrestling, right? Where it's almost like cannibalization of history, you know, just to kind of get to the next show, get to the next town, whatever. But you hear stories of, like, you know, Bruno Sammartino's original title, you know, being in an attic, or, you know, after the AWA kind of dissolved, nobody realized that Jerry Lawler still had the AWA title and was going to keep it at ransom because Vern Gagne didn't pay him, right? So it's just kind of weird, you know, when it comes to, like, or the fact that there's a very little footage on the Memphis territory, right? Because basically it was so expensive to record on the reels that they just take over show after show after show. So unless you saw it the first run, you didn't have it. But I mean, it's a weird kind of cannibalistic thing. These things that should be treasure troves that end up just getting, you know, sacrificed to the next thing that goes on.
Right. Just to let you know, you're going in and out with that audio, but I heard everything you said. And that's no different now than, like, and there's always legalities that change. Okay, who owns it now? We were talking about this off the air, actually, before we got on According to Woods, which was that we are, you know, people like, okay, like, for example, XPW. There's been a lot of legal drama with the ownership of XPW, because it was Rob Black, then it was sold to XEG, but then XEG was a sister company to Big Vision Entertainment. So then they had their own drama within those two factions, which were really under the same umbrella, yet there was friction. Then Rob Black had his stake in it after a few years. So, I mean, with all the legalities that constantly change, it's almost impossible, even if you were a part of it, to keep up with it. You know, I don't have any clue right now what the exact legalities are for who owns the XPW footage. I don't think anyone does. I think there's a lot of legal issues with that right now. Because I mean, maybe Kevin can give me an answer, Kevin Kleinrock, but I know throughout the years all this has kind of gone in weird waves and has changed from time to time. So yeah, I mean, this is but again, it's the same old story with just a different wrestling company's name attached to it. Like you're saying about all the stuff in Memphis, all the stuff in the Carolinas, and there's there's so much stuff. But then again, the business is changing now too, because WWE, once they can legally get their hands on the stuff, it simplifies everything, but it's all under one umbrella. And as we all know, they they will put their twist on pretty much anything they have. I mean, the greatest example, what we talked about, was WrestleMania 31 with Sting and Triple H. That's just one example. What we talked about on shows like Missed Opportunities with LOD and Demolition and whatnot. That's just an example of not just in a match of a wrestler from a rival promotion, but you're talking about owning a library of all these other promotions. So the purity kind of goes away a little bit. Again, kind of like kayfabe, it's very bittersweet. It's sweet that we have the access to all of it, but it's going to be presented in a way that is under the umbrella of the opposing company, or the company that wants to be the grandfather of all the other companies, you know. And they are, and they should be, you know. I mean, they're the Coca-Cola of all the other sodas that are in the supermarket. You might like another soda better, but most people are going to be drinking Coca-Cola. And it's going to be very difficult, not impossible, but very difficult for even if a new soda comes out, and let's just say there's a new soda cola that comes out and it is amazing. It is better than Coke. Still, good luck beating Coke, you know. It's just almost impossible to do. Not totally impossible though. Anything's possible, you know. I mean, AEW, they got some. They're doing pretty darn well right now. They've only been around for what, 2, 3 years? I don't know. Maybe I'm off.
Not even that. I think
2 years. Yeah,
Yeah,
2. Well, they were on. They were because they've been on TV for what, like a year now.
a year. Yeah,
Oh, right about. Yeah. Okay. So and they were around like doing shows before that. I mean, look, anything is possible. You know, if you have the backing. I mean, I could get into this with you too about Classic Wrestling Revolution, which was
yes.
spearheaded. That was the last ever show that Roddy Piper ever did, and we taped the pilot episode up in Point Hueneme. We used the NWA Hollywood wrestling set for our pilot episode. And I remember I saw Patrick Hernandez, Todd Kennelly, like they were doing their show, and then we came in and we did this pilot episode with Roddy Piper, Road Warrior Animal, Shane Douglas, and all these other stars. Roddy Piper's son was wrestling, Rocky Romero, and then Todd and Patrick like, what's going on with you and Piper, man? Like, because we were doing the announcing together. I'm like, I don't know. We're doing this pilot. Let's just cross our fingers that this happens. Like, really? Like, because we were keeping it under wraps, you know, hush hush at the time. But they all knew it because they were watching us with their NWA show. They watched us do the pilot. But the guy who ran that company, Bill Townsend, he was one of the founders of Lycos.com and LinkedIn.
Yeah.
So this guy was is billionaire, whatever. So this guy was going to fund everything. Well, there was a lot of things transpired. There was Roddy Piper's death. China was going to be involved. She died. And then a couple of the major investors ended up passing away. It was just a weird, tumultuous time with these odd things going on. And then one thing led to another. Investor pulled out, whatever. It just never got off the ground. But in some ways, this was going, because we already had a contract with Apple TV. We had a contract with a couple networks. So this was going to be the AEW at that time. It was called CWR, Classic Wrestling Revolution. There is a video that I just found out about. It's been up for 4 years now. It's the rough cut of the match between Colt Toombs and Rocky Romero, which was the opening match for episode 1. And it's the rough cut is on YouTube. And it's myself and Roddy Piper calling the action. And I will tell you, I do get choked up when I watch that. I really do. Because Roddy Piper only died later that month. It was shot, I think, on the 13th of July. And he passed away July 31st.
Wow.
And that was the last anything he did in wrestling. I mean, it was such an honor to work with him. I mean, I can't even tell you what an honor that was. And it was such a great special moment. And there was so much promise behind this new project. No reason for it not to go with the money we had behind there. Then when he passed away, I was actually in Europe. I was in Italy. And I'm in Italy, in Florence, Italy. And I see on worldwide CNN news, Roddy Piper passed away. And I'm ready to go back home and like start this up.
Yeah.
And everyone in Italy's talking about Roddy Piper, and I'm sitting there going, I just worked with him. Like it was so surreal. And it's really hard because not only, of course, for everybody who was a fan, but I got to know him and his wife and his kids, and great family, family man Roddy was. I mean, he's one of the true holdout stories of the business. He stayed with the same woman and all that. Um, and his son Colt was great, and he was awesome in that. Check out that match, Rocky Romero versus Colt Toombs. It was classic wrestling revolution. I
I
don't know if
literally pulled it
that's
up. It's
okay,
this.
cool.
I'm getting
And
goosebumps. That's
I will tell you that we were talking about the sports arena. If I had to pick Mount Rushmore moments for myself, I don't know where it would rank, but that moment of just calling the matches with him, that was absolutely up on that list, 100%. And he was the nicest afterward. He would, and not to say that I'm at all needing a compliment, but he was, and maybe he was just being nice, but he was, wow, this is great, man. Keep up the good work. I'm looking so forward to working with you. I like bouncing off of you. And I'm like, wait, is he talking to me? Like, what the hell? This is Roddy Piper, you know? But that was how he was. He was just like, go get him, kid. You know, like he was just like a big brother, father figure to everybody, all the boys. You know what I mean? He was just so like, hey man, put your heart into it. That's what you want to do. It's right here. It's right here. Like, oh dude, it's like the way you saw him on TV as a face. Like, it's very, very, very similar to how he was. A lot of him was in that, like all that good, the good part of Roddy Piper you saw as a face. Like that, a lot of that was him for sure.
yeah, yeah. I know. It's I mean, I don't want to get emotional, but I only got to meet
No,
him once at
yeah.
it was actually at the what was it, the Wrestle Reunion, the second year, and this had to be 2011, and obviously I've got the replica NWA title behind me, right, and
Oh, there it
I
is,
was
right.
gonna,
Oh yeah,
yeah,
I see it. Right,
right here,
yeah, right
right
there.
here, right there, right there.
Yeah.
But I'll pull it out. But what actually ended up happening? So it was, I think it was like January or February of 2011, and what basically happened is Christmas morning of 2010, my dad unfortunately passed away. Right, so
Sorry.
yeah, it was just a rough time, and I was just like I just didn't feel right, but I saw this thing happening and I was like, you know what? Fuck it. I'm going to go. Right. And do the VIP. And I had just purchased this title off of like High Spots or something like that. And got to the end of the line and it's like Brett, Terry Funk, and Roddy just shooting the shit. Right. And they didn't have to sign anything or whatever. The lines had kind of died off, but Roddy kind of pulls me over, right? And I'm just like timid because I mean Brett is the reason why I started, one half of the reasons why I started wrestling. Terry Funk again is somebody that Brett idolized, and Piper, I mean, is right there with him. So I'm just like, oh my gosh, right? And he looks at my NWA title, and I had already gotten it. Shane Douglas and Harley Race to kind of sign it beforehand. He motions to it, and he goes like this. And I just ask, what does this mean to you? And he goes, me and Valentine, that chain match at Starcade. And I
Yeah.
was just like, and he gives me a hug and then fucking
Yeah.
signs. And that's the
Yeah.
type of dude he was.
Yeah.
He was
Yeah.
incredible.
Incredible. And he was like that with me. Like, when I went in for the handshake, it was like hug me like I'd known him for 20 years or something. And oh man, I will tell you, like, my family, we had a family reunion in Europe, in Finland, where my like grandfather came from and all that. And after that, we went through Europe. And when I found that out, this was in 2015, of course, when he passed. But when I found that out, I was in Europe. Like I didn't want to, I didn't feel like doing anything. And I'm in Europe. I didn't want to go anywhere. I didn't want to. And I remember I just got myself up like, I'm here. I'm gonna go. I'm gonna get up. I'm gonna go. And take the bus tour, do whatever was going on. And but I tell you, that was rough. That was so rough, finding that out. where and when I did, and just it happening. And again, I was like, it was the beginning of like we were going to be a team, and I just met his family, and all I could think about was his wife and kids. All I could think about was them. I mean, to this day, like that is so. I can't. It's still like it's funny. Like I didn't know him a long time yet, but we hit it off. We and all this stuff, and it was just one of those moments in life where it was like, why this should not have happened. This was unfair. This wasn't right. This is not right. Moments and you look back and those are the moments that do test us. So that's like life. Shit happens. And it's how you deal with the shit. So but to this day that is still it's still 5 years later, but it's still like, whoa, that still is impactful even now, because he should still be here now. He if he died today, it would be way too soon, you know
Yeah.
in his 60s, whatever. But it was but all I can say to anybody that's never met him, and as someone that did work with him, all I could say was, no joke, I'm not sugarcoating a thing, because I was saying this to everybody within those couple of weeks before he died. I was just talking about this, like, oh, was the greatest, he is so awesome, and I was in the middle of doing all that when I hear that news. You know what I mean? So you could just imagine the impact. But no, I'm just, as someone that's worked with him, as someone that knew him, um, I had nothing but good things. I have nothing but good things to say about him. I didn't see nothing negative with that guy. He was just like a big kid, man. He was
Yeah.
like, he was, man, and he was and a humble guy. Like he was, again, he had a rough childhood. He scraped, so you could feel, even though he'd been years in this profession making money, he still had those roots, and you could tell. You could tell with some people they still have those. I've been through the ringer roots. He still totally had that, man. Like that, the character in They Live, right? He was a
Right.
drifter. He was all that, and John Carpenter wanted to use him over Kurt Russell because, no, I believe, when I look at Roddy Piper, I'm going to believe that he's a drifter on the streets, going through hard times, more than I will believe an accomplished actor like Kurt Russell. I'm still going to believe Roddy Piper more than Kurt Russell. That said a lot, right?
Yeah, he's just incredible. And I mean, I'm thinking about reaching out because I'm friends with both Ariel and Colt on Facebook. I think there needs to be kind of a. I
Yeah,
mean, if it's cool with them, we'll
right.
share some stories about their dad because he's just
Yeah,
great. They're great, and Colt has iterations of MMA. I think he
yeah,
he fought
yeah,
amateur for a
right.
while.
And that was one of the cool things with his match with Rocky Romero was he was one of those few guys that can truly infuse, like a Brock Lesnar type of thing, where you're watching a MMA guy perform a pro wrestling match. And dude, Colt was great, man. It was like, dude, Roddy, like, I'm not just saying this, but he's got to, because it's you. Like, dude, this guy's awesome, man. That was the first time I seen him work. I think I seen a couple of clips of him, but I think the first time I really seen a full match of his was when I called his match. That was the first time, and I was like, really, you never heard of him, Kloss? Well, yeah, I've heard of him, but I'm sorry, I just haven't seen him, yet, and type thing. But that was the first time, really. Oh, this is your son. Oh, this is what he can do. He was great, but Rocky Romero is a good talent too. So that was a damn good match. That was a great match, a great match.
Yeah. Oh no, and I mean, it's 5 minutes of brilliance
Yeah,
by both incredible workers, and man, it's amazing, and I mean, it does bring a tear to your eye, yeah,
yeah,
a
it
bit,
does. We'll put if you don't mind, Adam, whether you want me to or you, maybe for the listeners, we can put a link up on this video of that
Yeah,
match. Okay, cool.
I can definitely do that for sure.
Cool.
Absolutely. Yeah. But it's man, what could have been? What could have been? But I mean, and Arista Bean says nice, and good old Hot Rod. And yes, you can't leave out the Harley when you're talking about the NWA, and I completely agree. I'm a huge Harley Race mark, like, I mean, 100%. But I'm also like a Nick Bockwinkel Vern Gagne mark, right?
Nick Bockwinkel, right down the street. He went to Canoga Park High.
No
Yeah, I
way.
didn't. I just found that out because a buddy of mine, the same guy from KLOS, he graduated Canoga. I graduated from El Camino in Woodland Hills, and that's, I guess, in Canoga Park. It's pretty close, but yeah, Nick Bockwinkel went to Canoga Park High. I didn't know that. How crazy is that, man?
Wow. I see. That part I didn't know. I thought, because I knew
So
Warren was from Texas, his father, but I didn't know he grew up here, because I mean he was billed as from Beverly Hills,
yeah,
but
so he had ties out here, and again, more history, unknown history of professional wrestling in Southern California. I personally wouldn't even have known about that had I not like grown up in that area. I grew up in Woodland Hills for the most part of my childhood, and it's like, and I had friends that went to Canoga Park High, which was like a couple miles from El Camino. And that's I not even through my involvement in pro wrestling did I find that out. I just found it out because of being a local where he went to high school. It's crazy. And I worked with him too, by the way, which was awesome in Vegas when I was part of the NWA and Dave Marquez and all them. So
yeah.
shout out to Dave for giving me that opportunity to work with Nick Bockwinkel, and that was with Todd Kennelly and all those guys. So, and Todd's a good guy too. He was in TNA for a little bit, and he does a lot of shows. And Todd's a good friend of mine, and we feel like we're like brothers separated at birth. Like the way we talk wrestling and all that. Like really, like he's a good dude, man.
Which, spoiler alert, none other than half of the California Extreme Fighting / Lights Out and Championship Wrestling from Hollywood
Mm-hmm.
commentator Todd Kennelly will be on this very show later this week. So bam.
Awesome, man. One of the great things about Todd Kennelly, he has in his home WrestleFest, the arcade game. I am jealous. He's got the
I
whole
saw
cab.
him post pictures on it, and I'm
Yeah,
all
he's
like,
got the
is that
whole
real
cabinet.
Memorex?
My sister and her husband live down in San Clemente, and he lives in San Clemente, and I was able to uh, play the game with him, and it was like, and it's funny, like we were playing the game, and we were like acting like we were doing commentating, like when the earthquake came in, and we were talking about like, well, Jake the Snake Roberts is now battling the earthquake, and we know Todd Kennelly. Very bad blood right now, as it's just last week when Damien is no more at the hands of the earthquake. As well, we're gonna see. Like we were just like, we were trying to keep it going without laughing. It was just good stuff. Good stuff.
That is tremendous. Man, if I could have only been a fly on the wall to that. But
Oh,
I mean, that's incredible. That's incredible. I mean, and George Hermoso says Woodland Hills, home of Casa de Taco. Which,
oh yeah, Casade. You know what? It's funny. George Hermosa. Wow, what a reference right there. I gotta say, funny that he mentioned that because that is actually right up the street from Canoga Park High, where Nick Bockwinkel graduated and went to high school at. What George is talking about is probably the greatest breakfast burrito in all of Southern California, maybe the country, on the corner of Sherman Way and Topanga in Canoga Park, just north of Sherman Way on Topanga, in the little strip mall with IRS and nails and all that, and a
yeah,
lot of wrestling references. And Mr. Fuji was in there. There's a Yoshinoya. And right next is it's called Casa de Tacos. I'm telling you, folks, get the breakfast burrito with egg, sausage, rice, cheese. and get their guacamole on the side. Oh, one of the best. One of the best. And,
Damn it.
yeah.
Isn't it breakfast time already? And I'm sure
No,
they've
it
got.
doesn't matter. You go there, don't just always get the breakfast burrito no matter what time of day it is. I'm telling you. Normally 24 hours, close at 11 now because of COVID.
There you go. Damn it. COVID. COVID. Ugh. But I mean, dude, speaking of, I mean, because we're in nostalgia, yeah, in ways that, we once took for granted, right? You know, wrestling shows with people and all of that jazz, right? But I mean, I want to get into some nostalgia because you're a historian, much like myself, in
I
all
try.
things for wrestling. So if you were to bring back one move from a latter day, I mean, not a latter day, but a previous day in wrestling history, what move would that be?
Oh man. I do miss the test of strength.
Okay.
I miss the. I mean, I
Yeah.
guess you see it sometimes. I do miss that. You don't see the cross-faced chicken wing so much anymore, or do you? Maybe I missed it, but I don't think so. I mean, I guess I don't want to. I guess the ultimate one, but I can understand that's a guilty pleasure, I guess, because of the safety factor. But I do miss the pile driver.
Funny enough, two birds flocking together. Hermosa chimes in. Yep, pile driver.
Yeah.
That's what he says. And in terms of Casa de Taco, with the guacamole on the side,
Oh,
it's the best.
yeah,
Not
yeah.
one of the best, but the best. And prior to COVID, open 24 hours. Damn you, COVID, says Ruben Garcia. And and that was one of the finishes. Hogan Warrior at Mania 6, and Asuka uses it. So you're going with pile driver, right?
Yeah, I mean, I don't know if he's referencing to the test of strength. Is that what you're referencing, George? The
Oh no.
Warrior?
I, so I'll allow it because I mean I think the test of strength is more a spot than a move,
Yeah,
but
right.
I'll take it. I'll allow it. Like Mills Lane, let's do that.
Yeah,
Um,
I missed that totally.
so I'm gonna do my like an honorable mention, a la the wrestling chatter, but my honorable mention is the DDT. I hate
Okay.
that as a
Yeah.
setup move. I really like the DDT and the super kick. You should put motherfuckers away with it. Same thing with the spine buster. The spine buster. At least when Arn Anderson threw that motherfucker, you you didn't kick out.
Right.
That's it, right?
In a way, like we were talking about Luthez earlier, and how his move is still called the Luthez press. When you jump into the guy, um, you almost want to call like that move the Anderson Buster because nobody did it like him, right? Like the Michinoku driver or something like
Yeah.
that. Like when Arn Anderson did it, I don't know what. Like guys can do it decent, but there was just something about the way he did it that if Luthez is going to get that press, I think Arn Anderson should get the driver.
Yeah, yeah, but even he would tell you like he he wants it to
Or
be
Spine Buster. I'm sorry, Spine
the
Buster.
spine buster. Yeah, yeah. No, but I mean even he would tell you. And I think if you slow down that move, you could see essentially the mechanics of it. And Arn has almost like Matt Hardy, where they're kind of boat legged. When Matt Hardy nails a leg drop off the top rope or any part of the ring, he kind of goes like a wishbone, right? And Arn Anderson is like that when he stands. And part of that is his rotation because he can get his hips rotated in a way that most of us with like, I guess, able bodied and non boat legged can do.
It's weird because from just looking at him, he would not. You would think he wasn't that athletic, right? Like I have friends that just never liked Arn Anderson, and you either love him or hate him. Like I remember a friend of mine would say, I don't know, man. I couldn't get into Arn Anderson. He looked like a regular guy to me. He didn't look like a pro wrestler. He looked like my PE teacher from junior high school. I was like, oh, dude, you know what? He does look like a PE teacher from junior high school, you know? But either way, yeah, when you look at him, you wouldn't suspect that he was athletic as he was. But he was, not only was he, but he was, can do things that a lot of guys couldn't do. And that spine buster was just one of the prettiest moves that you ever see in the business, right? And no one ever did it like him. I can't think of anyone that did it quite like him. There are some decent ones, but I mean, you remember that in him doing it for a reason, right?
Yeah.
But the DDT, of course, Jake Roberts. By the way, when Piper, after he passed, it was myself and Jake were going to be doing the announcing for Classic Wrestling Revolution. So we got together, we met up, and he was doing a one-man show, actually, his one-man show in Burbank. Caught up with him there. And if I find some pictures, I can send those to you if you want to put them up. But yeah, the DDT, and I don't know if no one delivered it like him, but the psychology of how he set it up, and that meant that there was this evil snake coming to. There was so much to his DDT, right? And but a shout out to another El Camino grad, Craig Cadden. To this day, I can tell you it's a dangerous move because we played basketball together, and in the gym there was a mat down, and we're like, "Oh, let's have a match." And I DDT'd him, and I DDT'd him. So it's a dangerous move. You want to be careful with the DDT, especially if you're a couple high school kids messing around in the gym behind the coach's back when you're not supposed to. Ludlow, Coach Ludlow, the worst. But anyway, yeah, it's a dangerous move. Schwartzky didn't mind though.
Yeah, and Ruben Garcia is saying Eric Young used the pile driver to win the Impact World Wrestling Championship. So there's that. And Rose is saying Jake said it best. It's okay if people kicked out of the DDT, but nobody kicked out of Jake's.
Yeah, you know what? That's kind of cool because most wrestlers think the opposite. Like, whoa, you're going to use my move, and wait a minute, you are going to kick out of my move. Well, wait a minute. It's a good point. That was that George had said that.
Yep.
Yeah, George. It's a good point because paraphrasing what Jake said, because see, Jake was ahead of the curve. Like again, with his promos, most guys start low and then they start fast and then they talk like this. Where Jake started high and then he would drop it down low at the end of his promos, right? So he was very innovative. He would have been great with improv, this guy, right? Like places like the Groundlings and all that. But because he was different. And look, he looked at it differently right there. Most guys were like, well, you're going to do a superplex? I always win the match with a superplex. You're going to kick out? But it's, again, no, it was Jake doing it. Go ahead and do my move, but that's going to just show everybody. That's going to put me over more because that means that I do it better. I mean, you could look at it both ways, but very few probably looked at it and had the insight that Jake did to look at it that way. It's a very good point.
No, 100%. And I mean, Arisa says suplexes, preferably belly to back and landing on the neck, that also hurts. So I agree. I mean, belly to bellies or belly to backs, they're pretty brutal. But
and don't forget German suplexes; those could be dangerous too, of course. Yeah.
Yes. So I mean, and yeah. So he by default, by those premises, Jake's DDT was better, bar none. And Jake's best promo was Mania 6. And I agree. Yeah. I agree. It's great. But here, I'm going to go obscure, right? That's what I do. But the move that I would like to bring back above all others, and I think that nobody uses it, Vern Gagne's dropkick.
Okay, right. Yeah. Bare feet, right?
It's, the one where he flips out.
Yeah.
He hits you and shoots you off the rope, flips out. Yeah. I mean, hits you. That's that's Picasso shit right there.
I remember hearing years ago that was what in Minnesota with the training at the AWA, like he was big on drop kicks. And don't forget another guy that came out of Minnesota too, jumping Jim Brunzell, one half of the Killer Bees, and he had one of the greatest drop kicks in the business. And I don't know if it was Brunzell talking about it in the shoot, or if it was just somebody else from Minnesota, and he brought up Brunzell and Gagne and all that, and they were talking about Steamboat. Was Steamboat working in Minnesota for a while, right? Was he for a little?
He trained
He
there. I
trained.
mean,
Yeah,
yeah,
he trained there. That might have been it too. So, but they were talking about how that they understood how spectacular and how much just that move, the simple move like that. Remember in the 80s, like just a drop kick was like that got the pop. When the guy finally did a drop kick after a rest hold here, boring rest hold here, hip toss over here. Oh my gosh, we saw a drop kick. That's awesome because people don't kick like that. They kick with one foot on the ground. And when you see a guy, doing that. So in the 80s, that was remember just the body slam. The word body slam
yes,
meant something. There was a freaking movie with Dirk Benedict called Body Slam, Roddy Piper and all that. But they emphasized the drop kick in AWA with their training, and again, a la Gagne, Brunzell, Steamboat, who trained there. So the list goes on, but they held that in high regard, maybe more than most wrestling promotions did, at least for that time.
yeah, and I mean, see, I'm a big proponent of the AWA. I actually think, in terms of like titles, the AWA inmate title is a lot better than, say, the big gold belts. I just, in my opinion, my humble opinion, Vern Gagne's dropkick. I mean, Hennig's dropkick. I mean, it's just the list goes on and on. Like Flair came out of there, Billy Robinson, basically perfected his craft in North America there. Iron Sheik, the Jim Brunzell, the Road Warriors. I mean, that Rick Rude, that Minnesota territory was just, oh my God. Like, I love it so much. Like, that is my type of wrestling, and I just don't think, kind of alluding to what you were saying earlier in terms of, yes, the WWE kind of owns it, but they allow what stories get to be told. And I don't think the AWA and the Minnesota territory gets its just due in 2020 because it's way greater than anybody gives it credit for.
I mean, we talked about Hollywood and West Coast wrestling not getting its due. I mean, it doesn't nearly get the due that AWA gets, but for where AWA was and how long they held on, and also let's not forget, which everyone knows now, is the influence that they had, the star power to that initial boom of the WWF in the 80s. Like what, 90, 70, 80, whatever percent of that talent, that was, you're watching AWA. From the wrestlers all the way to the announcers, Jesse, Mean Gene, whatever, and Bobby Heenan. I mean, dude, that was it, man. You had Vince, Gorilla, and Lord Alfred. That was otherwise all the other talent, came from AWA on the mic, in the ring. I don't know if they got referees, whatever, if they got guys behind the scenes. I'm not sure. Guys that book and produce.
I know Gary DeRusha, who was one of the
right,
yeah,
right.
he ended up working for Vince.
Right.
Yeah.
And I'm sure he brought a few people over too. You maybe not the only one. That's usually how it works, right? Or at least maybe not right away, but eventually you get your friends over, type thing.
So, and then
Bischoff. No, the AWA, again, when we were talking earlier about West Coast Hollywood wrestling, and then we that doesn't get its due. You only hear about the North and the South. We even forgot to mention right there. I mean, I mentioned Harley Race in St. Louis prior to mentioning AWA because it's just because it's kind of part of the South a little bit. St. Louis, it's on the border, right? So you can kind of, it's not the South, but it's pretty damn close. So it's kind of considered part of the South. But yeah, at Minnesota, we all know about it, but it just, I don't know. That was the last. I know Crockett with the money and Ted Turner eventually was the official last holdout, but I honestly think the last holdout as far as competition and being able to draw and being because the only thing that was holding the NWA back was it felt too Southern to a lot of people. It to the rest of the country, not only to the Northeast, but also us out here. Like it was cool, but it was kind of its own thing. It was felt Southern, where the AWA had a bit more of a broader appeal, like the Northeast did. You know, the AWA didn't feel like they didn't all talk with Minnesota accents. You know, they talked like normal dudes. You know, we're in the South, like they're all talking twang. You know, and especially like early Jim Ross even said that about himself. Like he said, like you know, I Shivani was okay with it, but Jim Ross took. I mean, he always felt Southern, but not as much as in the early days. He really felt
Yeah.
like he was in a barn somewhere talking. You know, so I mean, he's talked about this himself. You know, so
Yeah.
yeah,
And it's funny because you know, where did Vern Gagne? You talked about Jim Ross and sounding like he just came out of a barn, or you know, announcing matches out of a barn. But where was Vern Gagne's training camp?
in a barn. And where was GXW in Lancaster? Pretty much on a farm, you know. So, no, you know, but no, it's no AWA. I love the AWA. I remember when they a little bit later on, not toward the very end, but when they were out in Las Vegas wrestling at the Showboat. Yeah, and that was exciting too. Didn't get to go to any of those shows. I think I was bummed. Like I remember one year watching on ESPN, and they were promoting when they were there next. And my family and I, we had just got back when I was a kid from Vegas, and they were promoting their show. And like, okay, the show's coming up in September, blah, blah, blah. Well, we were just there on the weekend of August. Oh, we were there. I could have gone. Yes, I know, man. Oh, I hate those moments. but
Yes.
yeah, but no, that was they were great, man. And they had ESPN behind them. They had all that. They had there's
Yeah.
there. And this was after the buyout. This was out, or not the
Mhm.
buyout, but this was after the talent pool left. They still had that momentum. So yeah, WWF has a lot to thank the AWA. A lot. Oh, I mean, that was it, man. I mean, look, we're leaving the head honcho out too. Hulk Hogan came from there. Not only did he come from there, but the Hulkamania thing was
He was
created.
born there.
Yeah, red and yellow, all that stuff. So, and don't forget Genomania too.
Yes. Oh, I mean that first incarnation of what they did with the Weasel, and I mean, they repeated it with Warrior. You
Yep,
know what? 5 to 6 years later, that was all done in Minnesota.
yep, absolutely. I mean, yeah, it's crazy. There's a wrestling. I have family in Minnesota, and there's a whole like kind of wrestling pride and culture up there. A little bit under the radar, but it's you can tell like it's still up there. Like it's weird. Like if you bring up wrestling, then oh yeah, I remember this guy, that guy, that guy, that guy. Like wow, that's kind of cool, you know.
Yeah, and this is. I don't think this is a controversial thing, but Ruben Garcia says, in his opinion, AWA had better action figures than the WWF because I mean, you could at least bend, you know, the AWA figures and pose them. The LJN figures, you couldn't
Yeah,
do. They were just the coolest looking rocks you could ever see, especially
yeah.
when the rubber started to harden.
I'll take his word for it. I don't know if I had any AWA figures, but I'll if you're gonna say that, you guys obviously know your stuff. So
Yeah, and if you do, I mean, you're sitting on a gold mine. I mean, I think
true.
Nick Bockwinkel with and it was weird. They did a NWA kind of almost mock version, and that's going for $700 on eBay.
Okay. Wow.
So if you're sitting on one this end,
I don't
you
know.
might
It's the
want to hold
same.
on to that.
And I think what is the most expensive one is that Error Kamala one, right? Still, where the moon and the star reversed or something like that.
Yes,
Yeah, or yeah,
that's the
yeah.
Holy Grail.
That's the Holy Grail, right? Yeah,
Yeah,
the late great.
and then Arissa saying her in Missouri, we're considered barely Southern, just barely.
Oh, are you talking St. Louis?
Yeah,
Yeah, my dad was born in St. Louis, and we had family out there, and it was like they kind of like, yeah, it is right. That's the fine line. Like, yeah, it's the South still, though. You know, I mean, pretty much. But that's it. After that, you're out. You're out. You're in the Midwest after
you did
that.
right. Yeah, man. But man, I wish I could have gone to the Chase. I wish I could have gone to Grand Olympic. I mean, these are things kind of like, man, I was born in a different era. You know, if I just 5 years before,
I,
maybe,
I
just
I
maybe.
feel that I like think a lot of people that are born say that. I remember my friend Dave, who's music aficionado, and he works at KLOS radio station out here in SoCal, 95.5 FM classic rock, and he's early 50s. He's few is decade almost older than me, and and he always says the same thing, like, oh, I should have been born like 5, 10 years before, then I could have seen all the stuff in the 60s. This guy's been to thousands of shows, right? But I think that too sometimes with myself, you know, with like I'm thankful that I got into the business, and even when I did, when I got into the business in the late 90s or mid to late 90s, kayfabe was still alive and well, but we were kind of on the end of the pendulum with kayfabe. It was if you want to go that school of thought again, Al Snow, kayfabe never died, blah blah blah. But you know what I mean, like it was changing. Let's say kayfabe wasn't dead or anything, but it changed, right? You still had that old way of operating in the locker room, and this is an honor and a privilege, boys, to be back behind this side of the curtain. And if we find you talking and marking out for yourself and talking to the fans, you're gone, man. This
Right?
is yeah, and as much as that's alive today, believe me when I tell you, it was tenfold more alive in the 90s, early 2000s, and the beginning days of XPW, and even the indie stuff we did before that. um it was just a different. But so in saying that, like, wow, I could always say that too, man. If I was born 10 years prior, you know, and got into it when it was really still the old way of operating in pro wrestling, I could say that too. But I think a lot of us, no matter when we're born, I think a lot of us like to glamorize the past.
Yeah.
And also sometimes when we do that, we don't quite realize, okay, what's right in front of us now. It's very easy to do that. I'm guilty as charged, you know. Yeah.
Now I gotta ask, should you have gotten in ring as a performer? Because you're a music head, much like I. What would be your theme song?
Well, I mean, my band is the Scorpions, right? I like all sorts of bands. I like Rush. I'm a big Pink Floyd guy, and I, you know, but we can even go to bands like Teenage Fan Club. I mean, I'm trying to get some obscure ones, but I go to a lot of shows, concerts. Tropa Magica. I want to put those guys over. They're three kids from East LA, and dude, they're awesome, man. They're like this alternative punk, but they sing it mostly in Spanish, and it's just a different kind of music. Tropa Magica, really good stuff. They're they're trying to find their spot now. They're not. You're not going to see them in the music store, but um, so I think one of the greatest theme songs mainstream is Demolition, right? Axe and Smash, because it was done by an actual rock musician.
Yeah.
Okay, it was done by, so that song, we were talking on the Wrestling Chatter, the CEO of Wrestling Chatter, and we both agreed like that song holds up more than LOD's theme, because LOD's theme didn't age as well as Demolitions. Demolitions is like, this is a badass song from the 80s that I could still listen to. Whereas LOD is great, but it was just another stock song from their music department, right? Good at the time, yeah, but I don't think it holds up as much. So my band is the Scorpions. They're my favorite, right? And I don't know. I'm gonna quiz some people out there. See if you can name me which wrestler slash wrestlers in the 80s, before the copyright and all that, they couldn't use, just like JYD came out to Queen and all that. I'll give you an even broader hint. What tag team came out to a song by the Scorpions, and the intro to this song is just, this is pro wrestling, and to this day it's one of like the best theme songs for any entrance of a wrestler. Just like the Demolition, it will hold up because it's done by an actual band. It's a real song from a real hard rock, metal, classic rock band. You know what I mean? So if anybody can chime in, I'll tell you in about a minute. But so this was always my favorite song for a wrestler. And again, it was done by an actual band. It's a song that totally lives up. And if you listen to the whole song, lyrically, it's amazing. It's very deep about the soul, about the world around you, like good stuff by the Scorpions. I'll give you a hint. It's from their 1982 album, Blackout. That's one of the famous ones with the guy with the forks in the eyes, Rudolph Schenker on the cover with the glass breaking. One of the best album covers voted in, Rolling Stone magazine.
Hermosa probably has a wrong. Bon Jovi.
I just started, I think I threw up in my mouth a little bit because somebody compared Pink Floyd, Scorpions, Rush, all these great bands to that girly pop music, Bon Jovi. So I just had a little throw up in my mouth. I'm sorry.
Yeah, that's not great. No, and then Arisa says, in Missouri, there's so many promotions. Just in Missouri alone, there's like 14, and she's not sure if they're fully active, but I mean, there's 14, right there in that kind of the shadows of the Chase Hotel, right? Wow. That area. So shout out to that. No, in terms of, so it damn, I wish I knew this.
The Bon Jovi.
The Brood of the Bon Jovi.
No, that's like a band that you get the testicles down here and you get the scissors, you cut the balls off. That's Bon Jovi.
Oh, okay. Okay, but if you talk about musicianship, here's what I'll say about that. Right, two of the best bass lines in pop history. Right, pop history is "Living on a Prayer." No, bass line pop. I'm not saying rock.
Okay, living all right, I'll take that.
Living on a Prayer, and it's Like a Prayer from Madonna.
Oh wow!
If you listen to the album version, that motherfucker, whoever's manning the bass, is like it's a tour de force. It's just in constant motion like this. I put that up against like James Jameson, who was a part of the Funk Brothers and the Motown and everything. I put those bass lines to that James Jameson level of, or even like a John Entwistle, the Mighty Oaks of the Who.
At least you classified it as pop music though, because that's what it was. I think your audio is doing the radio thing again, but I don't know if that's just me hearing you. But anyway, I can hear you.
Yeah.
Okay, there you go.
Now, Arisa's asking, is it the skyscraper?
Hey, there you go. She got it.
She got it?
Yeah, well, there was a few different skyscrapers, but it was Sid Vicious and Dan Spivey. They came out to China White is the name of the song. China White by the Scorpions on their 1982 album Blackout. Now you listen to the intro of that song, China White, and that's what the skyscrapers came out to. And I could just see, like, when that album came out, like that was the album of the early 80s for metal and all that. And I could just see like wrestlers driving down the road, listening to that album on their cassette player. And it's like when that song came on, I can vision it now. Like, who are the first two guys to be like, oh, we got to come out to this song. And they did it, But that was like a Demolition type thing by Rick Derringer was like an actual artist did that song. The Scorpions did that song for an actual album. So those tend to be the songs, no matter what the actual artist is. A good artist like that, those songs are going to stand out a little bit more than your in-house songs. But I think that China White, to me, not just because they're my band, but I just listen to that song and just imagine wrestlers coming down the aisle to Scorpions China White. And when you hear that song, read the lyrics. It's a damn good song too.
That's dope. One that doesn't of the current era, I don't think it gets much love because it was a TNA theme, but the Beer Money theme, Robert Roode, and
Yeah.
he's from the
Yeah.
country and he's from the city, and it told you everything you needed to know about what you're about to see. Take your money, take your alcohol, like that shit was. I had that on my playlist for a good 4 years, just like on my workout playlist. I would have that, like Communion, some UFO,
Oh,
Chicken.
UFO is another band. Like, I think the greatest live album possibly in the history of rock and roll is UFO's Strangers in the Night. If that is like the perfect live album. And you talk about like wrestling territories that never got their due. UFO is a band that never got their due. Like, there would not be an Iron Maiden without UFO. There would not be a ton of other bands. There would not exist without UFO. And I'm not just saying this because it's like kind of married to the Scorpions, because you have like because Michael Schenker, the brother of Rudolph Schenker and the Scorpions, they kind of like always were linked up, and Uli John Ross. So when you go to these shows with Uli, Scorpions, or UFO, or a Michael Schenker show, you always see kind of the same family of fans at these shows. It's kind of cool. And my good buddy Dave, the music guy, his favorite band of all time is UFO. My favorite band of all time is Scorpions, and it's just total coincidence. But because of that, there's this connection. But both these bands, and you have Kirk Hammett from
Metallica.
Dude, he will tell you, like, if it was not for Scorpions and UFO, like, he wouldn't be in Metallica. Like, he discovered Tokyo Tapes, the live album from Scorpions, and he's like, once he discovered that, it was like they were so different and melodic and innovative and European, but their own flavor, that for like 5 years, he said, like, he didn't even care about any of this other music. He was just focused on that. And UFO as well. And Michael Schenker, Matthias Jabs, Uli John Roth. And this was like, he said that in an interview recently, like, I would not, there would be no, I don't know if there'd be no Metallica, but it wouldn't be him and Metallica. He never would have got to where he was without those guys. And he says, like, where they're from, Hanover, Germany, Scorpions. He says whenever he goes there, he feels this, like, oh my gosh, yeah. And here, this guy again, like Bruce Springsteen. I've been all around the world, in New York, LA, and Tokyo, but just this little town of Hanover, Germany is like, oh, it's kind of cool, but Strangers in the Night. I'm a Scorpions guy, but I will say UFO's Strangers in the Night, I'm telling you, dude, that is the best. I argue to tell me another album. I mean, you have a lot of them that are close, but that live album is easily top 3, if not the greatest live rock album of all time. And it was in Chicago, I believe. Taped in Chicago.
Yeah, that's super. Now I'm going to go on a wormhole. I'm totally going to go on a wormhole. But yeah, no, I mean, in recent interviews, I mean, even past interviews, Hammett totally geeked out over Uli John and Michael, both Schenker brothers. So, I mean, fuck yeah, man. We wouldn't have a lot of the cool shit that we have now if not for those dudes. So,
and not only that, but George from Wrestling Chatter Channel, the CEO, he should actually thank the Scorpions, because on their big tour, they're probably their biggest one in the 80s, the Love It First Sting tour in 84, which actually the tour went for 3 years. They started in 84 and it went all the way to 86. But they played at the first Rock in Rio festival with them, and Queen played together, Scorpions and Queen at Rock in Rio. But on that tour, you know, who opened for the Scorpions was Bon Jovi, and that put Bon Jovi on the map. Yeah, it put Bon Jovi on the map, but Bon Jovi's actually pretty cool because he still to this day gives them props for, you know, because the Scorpions were on top of the mountain then when Jovi wasn't even known.
Yeah.
But they always kind of laugh about, here's this kid from New York, from America, Bon Jovi. Yet it took this band from a little tiny town in Hanover, Germany, to put Bon Jovi over in America. You know, it's interesting.
Yeah, and did it in Brazil.
I'm sorry.
And they did it in Brazil, so it's almost like the Pat Patterson.
Right. Okay. There you go. Yeah. I mean, yeah. It's.
Pat Patterson in one way and not the other. Take it for what it.
Right. There you go.
And George Ramosa saying, "Thank you, Scorpions," because he loves Bon Jovi.
And all he's really doing is emphasizing what Bon Jovi's already said, was just "Thank you, Scorpions." So Bon Jovi never like lost when he got. Actually, Bon Jovi covers on a lot of his shows. He'll cover when he goes to Germany. He'll always cover "Rock You Like a Hurricane," and
yes,
a lot of bands do that when they go to Germany. They'll cover a lot of. Because Rammstein and Scorpions, but commercial success, Scorpions were the number one of any rock group to come out of Germany. They're still basically the Beatles of Germany, you know.
Yeah, which funny enough, I mean, you know, obviously in the Hamburg circuit, the Beatles, when they were the Quarrymen, started out there. So I mean, Germany has this rich history, and it's I mean, it's something that, I mean, it reverberates today for sure. You know,
they do now, but again, the Scorpions was they were the band that broke that stigma, because nobody wanted to hear German rock back in the late 60s, early 70s, because UK already had everything, the US already had everything. Why do we need this band from Germany? Like, what? Who cares? We got all the greatest, The Who, Rolling Stones, Aerosmith, you know, they were already, Ted Nugent, everybody was already established, the Doors, Beatles. Like, why do we care about this Scorpions from Germany? You know, so they were the ones that had to prove themselves, and that's why they were so energetic in the beginning. They didn't want to stop playing. They wanted to show the crowd, like, hey, we can do this too. Then all the bands like Rammstein, Accept, all those other bands,
balls to the wall, fucking
that Scorpions opened the doors though for all those other acts, and then now the rest is history. There's a ton of bands from Germany, you know, on the
Well, I would think that, you know, going over to Germany, you know, at least for John Bon Jovi's voice, be a lot easier saying "Rock They Like a Hurricane" than "Du Hast." But I mean, I don't know.
I don't want to hear him sing "Du Hast." No.
Du Hast.
Yeah, no.
There you go.
I mean, he almost takes a little bit of the metal out of Hurricane too, but I guess it works, you know.
Yeah, and I mean, George Hermosa's over here. I guess Papa Shanga got to him because he just had some bad medicine. So I think he's the ultimate worrying it, you know.
Oh.
Yeah. So, or I mean, a bushashuru, as the Japanese say, you know, when you know, yeah.
Wow.
Yeah. So hashtag.
I think George Hermosa exited a little bit of that Casa de Tacos guacamole. Oh gosh.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah. I mean, if it comes out the same way it, you know, went in. It's double dare slime. It's Nickelodeon slime, and I'm sure Katy Perry had some of it. There's a video. I mean, I digress. But dude, this has been awesome. It's been informative. But where can people wait? Let's get some shout outs out of the way, dude, because you're, I mean, one of the cornerstones. You are, I mean, if it goes SoCal wrestling announcers, you're in my Mount Rushmore for sure, 100%.
Thank you. Well, I appreciate that. Thank you, man. Thank you. I
So
appreciate that.
let's get your shout outs out of the way, good
Okay.
sir.
Where can you find me and all that? It's at.
Or shout outs.
Oh,
We'll do
shout outs
shout.
to you. You're not close. Are you closing it out or what?
No, hell no.
Oh,
Just
shout out to. Okay, so we're gonna shout out to Danny Ramirez. We're working on a project called the Bats, the Red Bat Black Bat Show. We're trying to get that up and running. Want to give a shout out to anybody else that I've worked with as far as well, I want to give a shout out to Supreme and his kid Kano and his widow. We're going to be doing a tribute show. The date is up online. I don't want to get it wrong, but it's going to be in October, mid to late October, and it's going to be a tribute show to him. So we're going to see a lot of alumni from XPW there, I'm sure. Up and coming stars that have trained with Lester, and of course, I just interviewed Joey Munoz Chaos on Wrestling Chatter Channel. Thank you, man, and thanks for the nod there, man. But no, I really enjoyed interviewing him, and we touched on his uncle Supreme. So as far as just the wrestling business, just want to give a shout out to all these guys that I've worked with that are. I'm gonna really look forward to seeing a lot of these guys there, and that night is going to be all about Supreme. So leave all your drama at home, boys. This is not about you. This is about Lester. This is about Supreme. And if you're going to bring your drama, you can just stay home. You know, this is not about you. This is about Lester. This is about Supreme. Um, and it's going to be a great night. Uh, you know, all the guys that I've worked with, um, whether it was, you know, shout out to Piper's family again, and all the boys from XPW, WSX, Kevin Kleinrock, uh, the architect here in Southern California. If there's any promoter in SoCal that needs to be mentioned, it's him. And Rob Black, you know, Rob Black was the guy that gave us all this opportunity back in the day. Um, but yeah, and then shout out to Manhattan, Zuma, Venice, what is it? Redondo, Newport, no, Hermosa, George Hermosa, Wrestling Chatter Channel. And yeah, check us out. Subscribe to According to Woods. You can find me at Twitter at the Kris Kloss, Facebook Kris Kloss. Um, and you know, I want to say thank you. It's really amazing how we have all this interest in this still. You know, like I know after the Dark Side of the Ring aired with New Jack and Vic Grimes, and then Supreme's unfortunate passing, there's been this kind of like rekindled, renewed interest, and people kind of getting nostalgic recently, asking me all these questions through Twitter and all that. So it's really nice to hear everybody's just wanting to know everything. And I guess I've never really done these kind of interviews back in the day. The Kris Kloss you're looking at now is a different guy than the Kris Kloss. These are two separate people, right? So I'm
right.
talking to you as myself right now, and so because of that, people have been just kind of been curious about what stories about behind the scenes, in front of the curtain, behind the curtain, throughout the times in professional wrestling, whether it's XPW, WSX, or any of these other projects I've been involved in. IWA Deep South, when I would travel down to the South to do those death matches, you know, those were pretty crazy too. Yeah. So
Ooh, can we get
yeah.
into some of that?
Well, I mean, I when I get booked, it all depends. I've traveled to all sorts of places to do shows, so still do to this day. You know, people reach out if they have a show. Not now because of COVID, of course, but I'm going to be starting something in Pittsburgh in a few months if this thing kind of settles down. Hopefully, this COVID, so we can get started up there for a women's wrestling organization. Um, you know, and so I appreciate anybody that is still is interested, and I thank you guys. You know, that means a lot to me, and all the stuff that you said too, Adam. And wish you the best too, man. I know I've heard a lot about. I haven't seen you in action yet, but I know about your training. I know about what you've been doing, and looking forward to seeing you live in person performing. So, but before I forget, I gave you the Twitter, the Facebook, and not only, of course, the channel we're on, According to Woods. Give a thumbs up, like it, subscribe, share this video, and do the same too at the Wrestling Chatter channel on YouTube as well. Please be sure to share these, and if you have any more questions, keep them coming, because what I try to do is I'm trying to answer all your questions within the context of our interviews here. So I won't necessarily say, hey, here's a question, but if I know of a question in my mind that people have asked me, I'm going to infuse it to some of these stories here. So hopefully I've answered a lot of these questions that you guys
Yeah,
have been asking me personally.
100%. Well, I mean, George is saying there can't be a Mount Rushmore of announcers when there's only like two of them. No, there's you,
Wow.
there's
Thank you,
Marquez,
George.
there's and whoever did Grand Olympic, right? So
Yeah, but George, you're too kind. Jeez.
says everyone.
No.
Says
Wow.
everyone.
Busting the old chops. Busting the old chops.
There you go.
Busting chops. Busting
Or,
balls. Whoa, jeez. Oh, wow.
or like a luchador and getting your
Oh,
shit into.
and by the way, somebody asked me too, what in the world is Ico Pro doing behind me?
They don't know what they don't know. Please
No,
enlighten
no.
us.
They know what Ico Pro is, but why am I sitting in front of an Ico Pro sign? Somebody asked me that,
Oh
and
yes,
so this
and
is this.
An American flag too.
Well, the American flag is just been up there forever, so it's nothing to do with politics or anything like that. It's just there, you know. But the Ico Pro sign, I think I was just out of high school. I want to say like a year or two out of high school, and at the old Fallbrook Mall, one of the best little malls ever in the valley, which is gone now. It's just a bunch of strip stores like Michael's and Petco. It sucks now, but it was the
There's a Dick's
coolest.
Sporting Goods in there.
No, that would there used to be a sports chalet right there, but it's gone now.
Mm.
Bob's Furniture, I think it is now. But now that place is just a bunch of stores where it used to be like the coolest one-story mall, best food court in the world, best Chinese, Peking Express. The house chicken was the greatest. People would line up at 5 o'clock just for that one dish, and all the other spots, Sparrows, pizza, hot dog on a stick, were empty. I'm telling you, this Chinese food was the best at the Fallbrook Mall back in the day. And that alone, and their video arcade was awesome. But so there was a sports nutrition store. GNC was in the so they had these hard plastic blue signs of all their products. Like they had Ico Pro, they had all like whatever else, Muscle Milk, and whatever else other brands, and they were hung up around the store. And I remember passing by one day, I'm like, oh, Ico Pro, WWF, and I just walked past it by. And then like a year later, they remodeled the inside of the store, and I just walked in there. I'm like, hey, remember those blue signs you guys had hanging up? He goes, oh yeah, they're in the back. I'm like, oh, do you have the one that said Ico Pro? He goes, I don't know. Yeah, maybe. Why? And I'm like, if it's not, are you guys cool? Like, could I buy it off of you? He goes, you can have all of them. They're garbage. So I'm like, no, I don't want all of them. Like, can I have that Ico Pro sign? He goes, yeah, dude, take it. I don't care. And he was cool, but he was like, wanted to get rid of me. But so to this day, I've had this Ico Pro sign, and I don't know how many of these were made, maybe for like these sports stores. But if these guys were going to toss it, like those, like all the other ones are going to toss it, like this guy wanted to in Fallbrook Mall, who knows how many of these exist? So that answers that question. So it's just one of these little items I've kept over the years, and it just popped it up for nostalgia, basically.
So
That
that
was
is
it.
an original piece of marketing material from
Yeah,
Icapro.
yeah. This was used by like the GNC's stores with all the other advertising signs. So I don't know if it was made by GNC or if Titan Sports made it for them. I don't know, but it's legit.
That's sick. Because on eBay, I bought like a WWF Wrestling Challenge flag, and
Oh,
then
cool.
I was just like, wait, that wasn't
No,
an original
no.
piece of yeah.
Uh-uh.
So
I seen those. I was looking those up once, like WrestleMania Saturday night's main event. But I remember looking at them like, no, these would have been way bigger than this. Like the
yes,
yeah, the banners that hung above the ring, like that thing would have been like what, 6 feet, 7 feet tall, probably. Maybe five or something, but it wouldn't be this little flag, right?
no, no.
This wasn't used at wrestling events. It was used at the sports nutrition stores, but nonetheless, it's a legitimate created, piece of merchandise, whatever you want to call it. It wasn't a replica of any kind.
I think that's tremendous. Which I gotta I gotta ask because I mean, obviously, you being an auctioneer,
Uh,
post wrestling. I mean, in addition to wrestling, um, so what's the oddest or weirdest or most unique piece of wrestling memorabilia that you've seen come across your path or that you have? I mean, you mentioned the Ico Pro one.
well,
But
okay, I could show you this right here.
yes.
This was, if you could see it. Okay, let me get up
Back at
here.
the beach.
Yeah, so that Bash at the Beach banner was taken by myself at the 1995. What was it, Huntington Beach? Was it Huntington Beach, right? And it was
Yeah,
it was
yeah.
1995 Huntington Beach. And they had a couple bleachers set up in the back, uh, toward the sidewalk. And when the event was over, it was just like it was a free for all. Everybody was taking the Slim Jim banners. Everybody was taking the WCW little banners. Those were the first to go, the WCW banners.
Yeah.
And yeah, and then even the crew, WCW crew was there, and they looked like they didn't care. They were like, "Oh, this is out," because they couldn't control it. It wasn't inside of an arena. It was just out on the public beach. So they were like, "Man, I guess whatever happens happens." They didn't really care. They could produce new banners, you know what I mean? So nobody claimed that thing, and I snagged it. So I got stuff all over, like, at in storage in my family's place at our apartment, um, and I've created a little bit of a man cave that the old lady doesn't always appreciate, but but I think if it was gone, she'd miss it, type thing. But I think a lot of guys can relate to this, right? But but nonetheless, that I mean, I have some old. I mean, I got a ton of videos, XPW, WSX, and we have some promotional posters. I think I have some of those original XPW banners too that we had hanging up. I'm pretty sure. It's something that I'd have to go hunting for, amongst a lot of stuff that is just kind of like accumulated throughout the years. So, but
I think that's pretty sick. I mean, and I mean, it's glad to know that I'm not the only one. I mean, I got a little bit of heat because I actually saw on eBay the I guess the Chase Center, which is the new San Francisco stadium,
yeah,
right? And I saw a chair on eBay that was literally a part of the first Raw and SmackDown at the Chase Center that happened last year, and I had to get my hands on it, and yeah, that came today, and I got heat. I got heat.
of course you
Yeah,
did. Of course you
oh,
did.
yeah, and
That's
then there's
part of
like
the fun. That's part of the fun, though. That's part of
it
the fun.
is.
I do have a chair that, toward the end of the days of the sports arena, I have one of those maroon red chairs, those old chairs of the LA Sports Arena. I never got a forum chair, but I got an LA Sports Arena chair. And actually, I was sitting near Shane McMahon. Uh, who's the MMA fighter, big back in the day? I can't remember his name now, but they were sitting next to each other, and we go down on the floor after WrestleMania 21. I was sitting next to him, and when everyone was leaving with their chairs, the WrestleMania 21 chair, I don't know if you remember, but Adam Sandler and Rob Schneider were sitting at ringside,
Right.
and they totally left. They didn't care about their chairs, so they're like, oh, I don't want this. And then I happened to be there and some other guys, so I have either Rob Schneider's or Adam Sandler's WrestleMania 21 chair. So that one I've had. That one I've had. And it's just like, it's just kind of cool stuff like that that I never would have gone out of my way to get, but if the opportunity was there, then okay. But if some kid was there, wanted it first, I wouldn't care to take it, or anything like that. But no, that's another one. But I can't think of anything else. I don't really accumulate. I mean, other than this stuff that I got when I was younger, like as a kid. But once I got into the business, I didn't really like need to have anything that I was a part of, or I just didn't care as much when I was working. It was a job in a business more than when I was a youngster. Like, whoa, look at this wrestling stuff, like it's just kind of a different mindset. I'd be honest. I'd rather watch Gordon Soley. I'd rather watch Bill Mercer. I'd rather watch even Joey Styles or Gorilla Monsoon long before I'd want to watch myself. Like, I've just never been that way, even with already having done all this stuff. The only time I will kind of pay attention and I watch myself is when I find out that I made a mistake right there. I could have corrected that. I could have done that a little bit better. I forgot the name of this move or that move, or I maybe wasn't telling the story as well as I could have of the feud. So I'll go over stuff like that. I'll take notes and little things like that, and what I can kind of improve on. That's about it. So I recommend that to anybody else too. Like whatever you do, try not to take yourself too seriously. Always remember why you got into this business. We got into this business because we love it. We loved it when we were kids, and it's a dream to be doing this kind of thing. The moment you start taking it too seriously is the moment you lose that part of you that got yourself involved in this in the first place, the love you have for wrestling. And you don't the last thing you want is to be doing something you love and not enjoy it, because you could be working an office cubicle, and that's a job you want to is expected to not enjoy, right? Generally speaking. But just whatever you do, just all I can say from experience is try to, whatever you do, see if you can go up another level, and see if you can go up another level, because guess what, you can always improve. You can always improve. There's always room for improvement. And the day you don't think there is usually means that's your ego talking. And if your ego is talking to yourself, you're taking yourself way too
Way too
seriously.
serious.
And guess what? When you were a little kid loving this business, the ego was dead. It was just your love for the business. But the ego can destroy your love for the business. And just whatever you do, have fun. Don't sweat the small stuff. Do not sweat the small stuff. And always remember why you're doing this, to have fun, and to also give a little bit of yourself in this business that gave you so much when you were a kid growing up. And that's the biggest reward of it all. Whether you're an announcer, a wrestler, a referee, a promoter, a booker, whatever, you know, a lighting guy, camera guy, anything.
Yeah.
Because I have a lot of respect for those guys too, the camera guys, the lighting guys, because you can make an arena look good. Those guys are the unsung heroes. They don't get enough respect. Where you can make an arena look better than it really is, and then you can announce and wrestle, and you can produce a great show. Like, that says a lot, and that we don't talk about that ever.
No, I agree. And Paul Heyman, he was talking about, in the thick of the Monday Night Wars, and that's
Yeah.
one of the reasons why ECW is so fondly remembered, is he had the principle of accentuating the positive and hiding the negatives, right? So
Yeah.
rather
Right.
than
Right.
focus on, not playing these major stadiums or whatever, making do with, I mean, the best you could with what you had.
Yes. Right. You know, when we actually went into the old ECW arena, we like they took these some of the bleachers out, so we had to pull open the bleachers like a basketball high school gym, because what they did was they closed all the bleachers, painted them black, and then they put their own bleachers in front of those bleachers to have people closer to the ring and a little bit higher up, so it felt more intimate. And when we went in there in XPW, those bleachers, there were like two of them left, but there were usually like 8 or 9 that went around the whole ring, and it gave it that different feel. And this was a little production aspect that I realized when we went there for XPW. And then after we did our first show, it was a big crowd, hot crowd. But when we used the in-house bleachers to pull out, it was a world of difference. Like I watched that. I watched some old ECW. It's like, what was different here? It's like, oh, look what they did. Where are those bleachers? Next show we went back. I asked the guys, like, yeah, there's just 2 laying back here. We don't know. I think someone jacked the other 7 or 8 bleachers that encompass. It was like, oh man. And so yeah, little things like that, and they would hang the banner in a certain spot, which they still had the ropes for to put the banner on. So we put our banner up there. That ECW already had those
That
little cables, you know. So it was little things like that. Again, this part of the show really doesn't get the credit, and that's with a lot of things, Hollywood, everything like that too. So, but yeah, in wrestling, yeah, he did a great job with that. That place was just a regular old bingo hall, nothing like unassuming place. But damn, they made it look good, and we tried to do as best we could too, with the stuff that was still left over, you know. But again, those little things made a big difference, and we unfortunately we didn't have those things were gone by the time we got there. They were stolen,
Yeah,
whatever, you know.
no, for sure. And George, and he looks up, and it was the Undertaker. I was
Yeah, I was when I went back to Philadelphia, we had a little sub Philly cheesesteak place called Tony Luke's. Philly cheesesteak, Tony Luke's. Oh, one of the best, one of the best. And the guy, you know, it was a typical, you're in Philadelphia and I'm kid from LA, first time there. I'm like loving the culture, like wow, this is great. True story, by the way. I get in line and I have my Lakers jacket on. I think they were like, you know, they hate the Lakers there, right? And and I go, I'm just like in awe of like, wow, this is an old Philly cheesesteak place, dude. This is cool. And hey, everybody's talking like this. Hey, what do you want on you? What do you want on you? What do you want on your sandwich? And what do you want? And I'm like, wow, hey man, this is awesome. And it was almost like Seinfeld, the soup Nazi episode. We're like, come on, hurry up, hurry up.
yeah.
So no joke, I go to Philly and I'm like, dude, this is great, man. I've never done this before. The guy's like waiting for my order, rolling his eyes, and then I'm like, I want to get a Philly cheesesteak sandwich, man. He goes, where the fuck you think you are? You're in Philadelphia. You don't need to say Philly cheesesteak. You say cheesesteak, back of the line. No joke. He says back of the line. But I wasn't pissed. I was like, this is awesome. This is cool. He's
Wow.
kicking me to the back of the line. Dude, this is the real thing. There was only like 3 people. I didn't care. But and then he was a big wrestling fan. He said one day, you know, I was sitting here making a sandwich. I put on the provolone. I put on the Kobe, the cheddar, and all that. And a couple slabs of salami, and some honey baked ham, some smoked ham, and a couple of slices of turkey. Put the fixings with the lettuce, tomato, and a couple of olives. And, you know, I guess a wrestling show over here, but I couldn't believe it. I look up after I slapped the mayonnaise on. I put the bread. I look up. There's the Undertaker. And the Undertaker standing right here. Couldn't believe it.
That's
Amazing.
tremendous.
That was the guy actually they used for the SummerSlam '94 promos.
Wasn't it?
Yeah,
Yeah,
because
with the Leslie
he was
Nielsen, right?
talking. Yeah, he was talking like, this is perfect. You got keep that energy and talk about the Undertaker. You know, he said, hey, I couldn't believe it. I look up, there's the Undertaker. Right after I put the salami, the mustard, the hot mustard, and put the hot sauce on the side with the salami slices. Undertaker. You know, unbelievable, unbelievable.
That's fucking tremendous. And and Arissa says she was at the Dollar Tree and she actually found a Bobby Heenan DVD. You should have grabbed every one of those. I'm just
Yeah,
saying. Those
I
are gems.
agree.
Those are gems. Oh
Yeah,
my god.
that's yeah.
Oh,
I
I
never
mean,
get tired. I never get tired of watching certain eras of wrestling, and he's one of them. Like I never get
yeah,
tired of him ever.
yeah, 100%. I mean, I mean, when you talk about like the greatest of all time, and I don't like those, you know, like you were talking about the Mount Rushmores or the greatest of all time. But that's one where you could actually go like unequivocally, that's it. Bobby Heenan in terms of, you know, heel announcers or managers for sure. I mean, when you've
Yeah,
got Jim Cornette and Percy Pringle or Paul Bear talking about like the greatness of one Bobby Heenan,
right.
I think you've done it.
Yeah, I think so. And I don't know if Paul Heyman what his thought on that is. I don't know where he.
He's there. He's top five for sure.
No, I mean I don't know if Paul Heyman gives props to Heenan the same way Cornette and Pringle do. I don't know. Or is Paul Heyman kind of like Michael Jordan?
No, he's gone on record. He's
Okay,
he's gone
okay,
on
cool.
record to say, yeah, yeah, for
I don't know
sure.
what I don't know what Paul Heyman and Jim Cornette think of one another. That's interesting because they're pretty neck and neck as far as the greatest ever. But when Paul Heyman was just starting, Cornette was already well established in the NWA.
Yeah, yeah, but you know, when you think about it, they're the North and South equivalents of each other. Where you know, taking pictures at the show, and, you know, I mean, literally, I mean, what's his name? After you know, when
Yeah,
George Napolitano couldn't make shows, especially in the South, you know, they would send Jim Cornette, and he would send stuff up to the New York office, or you know, just even the what's it, Jeff Jarrett's mom, right?
yeah.
Or Jerry Jarrett's mom. I'm sorry, Jerry Jarrett's, wasn't it that ran
I
the
think so.
Memphis
Yeah.
territory?
I'm gonna I'm
Yeah,
gonna I'm gonna turn my camera off for a second. Are we keep
go go
talking?
go.
Okay. Okay. I can hear you. Can you hear me?
Yeah, man.
Okay.
Yeah,
Okay. Yeah.
he's
Yeah. Keep
almost as
going.
dark as me, so that's great.
Ah.
10 points. 10 points.
All right.
No, but yeah, so it's just kind of it's kind of funny where oh fuck, I forgot my fucking thought. Never mind. We were talking about Memphis. We were talking about something. Oh
Yeah.
yeah, they were the east and west of each other, or south and north of each other. Jim Cornette
Yeah. Right. Right. Right.
and Paul
Paul Heyman.
Heyman. Yeah,
Yeah. They were the counterpart for one another as far as that goes. But they played their role well. But I think that when Paul Heyman was starting, like Cornette, wasn't he like already like established as a manager on a more broad mainstream platform with the NWA with all that, you know. And Paul Heyman was with the youngster with the cell phone and
the
all
cell
that.
phone. Yeah.
He was just getting started. What was your first introduction to Memphis wrestling?
Oh, that was PWI for sure. I mean,
Yeah,
that was it. And I mean, right around the time that I would have first been aware of it was obviously, you know, I think it was MCW, Memphis Championship Wrestling, and you know, they had Flex Cavana, who went on to be The Rock, you know, and they like Visser was there, but then also my stepmom was from Memphis,
oh
and
wow,
she would tell me about going to, you know, the Mid South Coliseum, you know, and
yeah,
Jerry Lawler, and how Jerry Lawler is literally the king of Memphis, especially after Elvis died, but even in the dying, well, Elvis's last days, he had a spot in the Mid South Coliseum that
yeah,
nobody saw, and I mean the last few years of his life, every Monday night, Elvis went to go see the true king of Memphis, Jerry
yeah.
Lawler. That is fact.
That's amazing, and people that aren't from there just don't realize the impact that he had on that region of the country. I was actually in I didn't, when I was a kid, I was telling you, we got world class, we all that. We didn't get Memphis, but I was introduced to Memphis a little later. But I remember before right when XPW in 1998 was talked about happening, because we debuted in 99. But in 1998, I was actually an extra in the movie Man on the Moon, for the
Oh
wrestling
yeah.
scene. Yeah, which was actually at the Grand Olympic Auditorium, which they filmed, and which was weird. They called it the Global Wrestling Federation in the movie, and they had signs that said Mid South Coliseum, which was kind of cool. But I was in there as the extra, and then I also that's all I wanted to do. And they said, hey, well, if you want to come tomorrow, you could be an extra in the Carnegie Hall scene, which was filmed at the old Los Angeles Theater on Broadway in downtown. And in fact, not in the wrestling, but in the Carnegie Hall, you can totally see me. I'm sitting right behind Danny DeVito in that moment. But this was at a time when we were just talking about getting XPW started. I just was kind of curious. I wanted to just check out the wrestling angle at the Grand Olympic. And that night, they did a work. I don't know if you know the story. If you've seen the documentary of Jim and Andy on Netflix with Jim Carrey.
Yeah, yeah,
And
yeah.
yeah, remember the part where they went to the Grand Olympic and they filmed the scene, and then the last scene they showed Jerry Lawler getting pissed off at Jim Carrey. And when they did that, they told the crowd, they said, "Okay, folks, we're gonna end this tonight." They kayfabed it, and
Yes.
I, as a wrestling guy, and everybody else that were non-wrestling, like, "Oh my gosh, I can't believe this happened." I'm like, "Oh my gosh, you guys are getting worked. Like, this is a work, you know." But all the non-wrestling people and even the actors, the crew, they tricked all of them. And Jim Carrey went to the hospital in an ambulance. I was back there when it happened, and I was right there when they wheeled him into the ambulance. I'm like, this is a work. And then they called the news, and then the shoot was done.
Yes.
So I drive home. I go home. I click on the news, and it's all over. I'm like, they're kayfabing it, and it's working. Like that's the first time they exposed that on the Jim and Andy documentary. But at that time, people were like, "No, dude, this is real." I'm like, wonderful. They're doing exactly what they did in Memphis and on David Letterman. And I'll tell you, when I said I never get tired of watching Bobby Heenan and certain things in wrestling, I will never, ever, ever get tired of watching Andy Kaufman and Jerry Lawler on the David Letterman show with the slap. I'll never get tired of that, because I think that moment in history of professional wrestling, that was the peak of working kayfabe in this industry, because pro wrestling was ahead of and was working the mainstream pop culture. Wrestling was, in that moment, was working the non-believers of professional wrestling. That was the pinnacle, in my opinion, of kayfabe at its ultimate height. And I'll always appreciate watching that moment of Andy Kaufman and Jerry Lawler and David Letterman, and that whole play out, and the whole world, the whole audience buying into it and getting
Yes.
into, not realizing they're doing so, getting into professional wrestling subconsciously.
100%. I actually remember because I had to be maybe high school, and I remember watching it on Channel 13 here in LA, Cake Out 13, because they had an afternoon. They were one of the other, like, the news channels that had an afternoon newscast.
KCOP
Yeah,
13.
yeah, and it that was like the first run thing, and then NBC and Fox and all that, whatever, they started picking up on it. Then you saw it on Showbiz Tonight and all that jazz.
Yeah,
So yeah.
amazing. And that again, going against the Al Snow school of thought, like, okay, kayfabe might never be dead, because we always knew what it was, a work, even in the 50s. But to execute something like that today has to be so sophisticatedly done. Now, is it impossible? Nothing's impossible, right? But in a limitless universe that we live in, right? So, but in order for us to comprehend that right now is near impossible unless we get kayfabed, right? So you could do that, but it has to be on a different level in the climate that we're in now. Because you could do that, pull it off, and execute it in the early '80s, and it's so easy for us to look back in retrospect and see that,
Right.
right? But now, I would love for that to happen again in some form or another. But again, to me, if anybody out there watching and anybody out there want to like challenge that, like, when do you think kayfabe can a moment in pro wrestling history when kayfabe can can compete with the kayfabe that was executed with Lawler, Kaufman, Letterman, all that? Because Letterman was kayfabe, and remember, for a long time, Letterman didn't want to have anything to do with
With
professional
wrestling.
wrestling on his
Yep.
show. So they were always on Jay Leno, they were on Johnny Carson, they were on Arsenio Hall. Of course, Arsenio was the coolest with the wrestlers, right? Because
Yes.
he like Regis Philbin, they got it and they wanted to put it over. But Letterman, aside from that, when he found out, he was his
He's
ego was
livid.
tested, man. Yeah, it took him a few years to do anything with pro wrestling again.
Which
So
I think it's weird because he's an Indiana boy. I mean, that's a territory system right there, you know?
but what I'm talking about is the fact that he got worked.
Oh
And he got
yes.
work. Yeah, he got worked on national television on his own show, and and so there was a little bit of bitterness right there. And Letterman's talked about that years later. Like he and his people said, nope, he didn't want to have anything to do with wrestling after whenever it was. It wasn't right after he found out it was a work, but he eventually did find out. And once that happened, there were a few years it took him. He was the one talk show that nothing to do with pro wrestling.
No,
And that
100%.
was great. It was a work, man, and it was a work, and they worked a brilliant mind, television mind, and comedian like it, David Letterman. Wrestling worked him and his audience. Beautiful,
I,
beautiful. I'll never get tired of watching that, man.
it,
Never get tired of
it's
it.
it's genius, you know.
Yeah,
And Ruben saying, "Yeah, Kerry Kayfabe's LA for sure," you know, and George Hermosa's plugging the wrestling chatter. So yes, check that out. She says she's got to get sleep, but Rusa, thank you, and again, subscribe to both According to Woods and Wrestling Chatter.
thanks.
And
Thank you.
Conan O'Brien had a ton of wrestlers too.
Yeah, wrestler. Yeah, Conan. Like I said, everybody had them, but there's a pretty funny one with Yokozuna and Mr. Fuji on Conan O'Brien. I don't know if you've seen that one. Where like
Yes.
every time he asks Mr. Fuji a question, Mr. Fuji has a oh yes, and then Conan's like, "Is that how you always answer your questions?
Answer.
Like what's your driver's license number?" A12. It's funny,
Yeah.
but I separate, even though they had wrestlers on, and Jay Leno did a lot when he was involved in that angle. But I truly think like Regis Philbin and Arsenio Hall
Yes.
were the two that like they were just fans. They were just fans,
Mm-hmm.
Yep,
Yep.
I
Regis
got you,
that.
Ruben. Regis. Yep.
Yep. And it's funny because a lot of people don't realize. I mean, Regis almost credits his entire career to pro wrestling. I mean, you got
Right.
to remember, Classy Freddie Blassie was essentially the star in LA, right?
Yeah.
The Grand Olympic Auditorium, and they
Right.
ran shows in San Bernardino. They ran shows at Bakersfield. They ran shows in San Diego, where Regis was a host, a
Yeah.
regional TV host. And for a star like Classy Freddie Blassie to come on the Vampire, right? To come on Regis Philbin's show in San Diego, that put Regis Philbin on an upward trajectory.
Yeah.
So that's essentially how that happened.
Yeah. And also Steve Allen, the original host of the Tonight Show. Was he the? I think he was the first one, right? It was pretty. Steve Allen, I think, was the original
Steve
Tonight Show.
Allen, yeah, yeah.
So he was at WrestleMania 6, but he was a wrestling announcer. He was a wrestling announcer, man. So there is a lot on that Mount Rushmore, George. Jeez. But Can you, Adam? I can't. I don't have access right here, but I don't want to butcher, or George, if you're listening, the date of that the Supreme Tribute show in October. I don't know if you have access to that, but
Uh, yeah, I was looking. I can't. I'm looking on Joey's Instagram page, Chaos's Instagram page,
okay,
and it's him and ribs, like not wrestling ribs, like actual barbecuing ribs.
okay,
And then there's tribute stuff, but I don't see the
okay.
no, I don't see anything.
We'll put it, post it in the comments, or so it'll be there
Yeah,
somewhere. So
for sure.
look down, folks, at the comment or the video description, and we'll give you all the
Yep.
info.
Yeah, for sure. Because that's something
Thank you, Adam.
I
Thank you for
definitely want to
doing
be
that.
there for.
Thank you, Adam, for doing that too.
Yeah, no worries. I mean, again, it's you, it's Supreme, it's the Messiah, it's Chaos. I mean, you guys represented SoCal wrestling in a way that hadn't been represented since Grand Olympic Auditorium, and that wrestling, ended in what, the mid 80s, mid to late 80s.
Yep. Yep. Yeah.
You guys were the first like national, promotion since then, that
I
had
got
TV.
Yeah, we were the last ones to be strictly a SoCal based promotion. That, I mean, look, there have been a lot of great impactful promotions like PWG and Rev Pro. I mean, a lot. There were a lot, and they have their own thing going. I'm just talking more so about, which I think what you're alluding to too, is as far as like television exposure and these type of things, where it was a weekly basis. And also it was an honor to basically close out the Olympic Auditorium. We were the
Yes.
last company. I mean, FCW came in there too for a couple one-offs and some lucha shows, but we were the last company, Southern California based, to be that old school like territory basically in SoCal, to have weekly television and home video, and eventually one pay-per-view to emanate from the Grand Olympic Auditorium. I personally am more personally attached to the sports arena, but I understand the importance of the Grand Olympic Auditorium, and that was obviously an honor and a treat to be a part of that as well.
Yeah, for me, I mean, the Grand Olympic is this because it ties the legitimacy of wrestling to, like boxing, and I would even, if MMA had started and kind of taken a hold, you know 10 years before, MMA,
Totally.
that's a perfect venue for MMA.
Totally. I mean, are you kidding me? The octagon right there in that square built arena. Yeah, that, I mean, there's nothing like the Grand Olympic Auditorium as far as it like we said earlier in the show, fitting wrestling and boxing and MMA like a glove. And that was just, it was wonderful. And the Olympic too, just to get back to the production side, like, the TV taping, they put up the lights, like the concert
Yeah.
lights around the ring, whereas a house show just has the light underneath the scoreboard. But the Grand Olympic, that was built into the stadium. You didn't have to bring lights in. Like, that was already up around the ring, on the rafters hanging down. So you can see it clear as day when you watch Free Fall, XPW's Free Fall from
Yes.
2002, when Vic Grimes and New Jack were on that 40-foot scaffold, because they're like right next to the lights right
The
there.
lights. Yep.
That was the Olympics lights. That we didn't bring those in. So that place was just built, made for wrestling and boxing. And I like what you said too, like the uh, the legit factor of linking wrestling with boxing, because it's like, again, that goes back to the days of, we're going to present this like a sport, like a prize fight. We're going to present this like it's wrestling and boxing. Which one? I don't care. It's wrestling or boxing. They're linked together. It wasn't long before the word entertainment ever entered the phrase of professional wrestling. So yeah, I mean, personally, that's what I loved about it when I was a kid. Like, when I found out it was a work, I appreciated it even more when they presented
More.
like a sport. Yeah, completely.
No, 100%. I mean, and again, I mean, just, I mean, some of the haunts of the Grand Olympic Auditorium, right? Because the policeman for that territory, right? Because that was owned by Eileen Eaton, right?
Yeah.
So Eileen's son won judo Jean LaBelle, the person who taught Bruce Lee how to grapple, the person who, up until a couple years ago, he was still judging fights here in California
Yeah.
as a judge, right? So I mean, I think there's just, I mean, MMA people, pro wrestling people, they know the Grand Olympic Auditorium even if they don't know it. If that makes any
And
sense.
and and speaking of legendary names, want to give a shout out to Rick Drayson and his family. There's another SoCal legend as well. So he just passed a couple days ago, and again, paved the way for a lot of what has transpired and what is still transpiring in SoCal, in this end of the country's brand and history of professional wrestling. Definitely a big name right there that we lost for sure.
Yeah, I mean, Rick, and even this, right? Rick's Corner was the
Yeah.
first, even before. I mean, for my money, that it was even before Colt Cabana's wrestling podcast. Rick's Corner was essentially one of the first wrestling podcasts there was, where he talked about training with Johnny May Young, and he never called her May. He was Johnny May Young to him, and he's the one who created the Golds logo, So
Yeah,
I
right.
mean,
Yeah, he created Gold's Gym logo. Yeah, yeah.
just
People
an
again.
indelible mark of and piece of SoCal pro wrestling history. And
Oh,
R.I.P. Rick.
yeah, and speaking of Gene LaBelle, when I remember when we did the pilot with Roddy Piper, we the night before we met at the Airtel Hotel in Van Nuys, which coincidentally was around right around the corner from the old XPW offices. So when we met for that classic wrestling revolution, and Shane Douglas and I were talking like, "Hey man, this is where we are, right?" And he's like, "Oh yeah, that the office is right here. Wow, go figure, And but I remember Roddy Piper. We were sitting around having dinner that night at the hotel, and Road Warrior Animal, Shane, Bill Townsend, Roddy Piper, his son Colt. We were all there, and Piper just kind of took a moment to talk about Gene LaBelle and say like, this guy I have so much to thank for, and I can't wait to see him. I'm in Southern California and all this, and it was just very cool to hear him just like humbly talk about Gene LaBelle, and obviously respect up the yin yang for this guy. So I mean, here you're looking up to Roddy Piper, but you see him looking up to somebody. It says a lot.
Yeah, 100%. And it was kind of a teary eyed when Judo Gene finally laid, kind of hung up his whistle, and
Yeah.
that was, the first couple of years of my career was just going down to the sports. What was it? The Sportsman's Lodge, right in
Yep.
Studio
Yeah.
City.
The
And
cauliflower.
see, yes, and just
That's where
seeing
the
him.
original cauliflower club events were held.
Was it?
Oh yeah, the one right in Sherman Oaks there. They moved to
Yeah,
Vegas.
yeah.
Yeah, it was right here. And you know who else was lived right down the street from me before he passed away was another great. Speaking of a whistle, was not Jonathan Coachman, but the other coach, John
John
Tolis.
Tolos.
Yeah, he used to live right here in Calabasas, and it was not too far from actually where I live now. Um, so it's like there's just so much out here that you can speak of, um, that influenced this entire industry. You know,
Yeah. Oh, and George is saying the hardcore, Angel, way, way, way West Hollywood. But imagine if Cauliflower Alley were still in Studio City.
I mean,
Well,
I remember that was kind of like a Vegas thing where I heard the AWA was there, and I remember like my family and we went there after church a few times to have their brunch, and then I just realized, like, I heard later that, oh, the Cauliflower Club was just there. Unfortunately, I never caught any of those, but yeah, unbelievable. They were right here, Sportsman's Lodge in Studio City on Ventura Boulevard, right off of, what is it, Coldwater, or I can't remember, but
Coldwater.
yeah, Coldwater Canyon, kind of near Casa Vega,
Yes.
the Once Upon a Time in Hollywood spot,
Yes.
yeah, a lot of history, and again, unassuming, regular little place in the valley here. Boom, that's where the Cauliflower Club was started. Again, you're not going to hear this stuff talked about, unless you're talking most likely to West Coast, Cali people that not only know the history, but want to preserve it, and just get it out there. Because, not to say that people on the East Coast don't know about this, it's just generally speaking, it's not on their radar, so it's nice that you have this platform, Adam, to again just kind of go over, touch on the history that we have out here, and it all started, back in the days of going back again to the Mount Rushmore, Gorgeous George, and all the characters around him. And who did he influence? He influenced Muhammad Ali. Muhammad Ali,
Yes.
yeah, Muhammad Ali, always giving credit for his promos to freaking Gorgeous George, of all people. So, you know,
Yeah, and in all sports, right? Whether it be football, baseball, MMA, right? The ones that transcend the what I like to call the pop culture lexicon, right? And almost have a Hogan or Austin like effect where they transcend the genre,
mm-hmm.
and they become the central force of that one thing to a lot of different people, right? Well, most of those people that go into other sports or whatever, they borrow greatly from pro wrestling.
Yeah.
When I saw Rampage Jackson in Pride, oh, he's doing Junkyard Dog.
Mm-hmm.
Like it's there. Conor McGregor is a mismatch of Ric Flair and Kenny Powers, or not Kenny Powers, but was something to that effect. Like one of
Okay.
those. Yeah.
Yeah. And not only, again, going back to production of professional wrestling, you will never give credit to this industry for like what Hollywood takes or what the NBA takes. And there have been a lot of production aspects that have been taken from professional wrestling and have been melded into sport and entertainment. And that's exactly what wrestling is. It's sports and entertainment. So if you have the only entity that really is that, well, I mean, what can you compare to? The Harlem Globetrotters, roller derby? But that's about it, where the sports and entertainment, so NBA's copied it, NFL's copied it, certain aspects of Hollywood have copied it, and it's only can be looked at as a compliment. Of course, like anything in professional wrestling never gets its just due, though. Nobody wants to admit that they took from professional wrestling this lowbrow, whatever, or what, what the mainstream doesn't understand about it. We'll call it, and deem it. But as a true, whatever, fan, aficionado, historian, whatever you want to call yourself, it's known, and no explanation is needed. And those that don't understand, no explanation will do. You know.
100%. 100%. Now, George is chiming in, and I have there has to be a story, all right? But Kris Kloss rode with Awesome Kong to Cauliflower Alley in Vegas.
Yeah. So actually, we were doing a show for the NWA at the Plaza Hotel in Las Vegas, and that was actually the same show that I talked about where I was doing announcing duties, and so was Nick Bockwinkel. But Kia and myself, and this was when she was still in TNA. She had yet to come into WWE, but she was living in LA somewhere near downtown. And I got a call from Kevin Kleinrock, who was Big Vision was part of producing the show for the NWA. And she goes, "Hey, are you driving to Vegas, right? Yeah. Okay. You cool giving carpooling?" I'm like, "Yeah, sure. Who?" I'm like, Kia, right? Kong. I'm like, "Yeah." I never met her, and she got a ride to my condo in downtown, and the two of us rode out to Vegas. And I tell you, man, sweetheart, sweetheart. And I was talking to her about wrestling, and I remember showing her, like, oh my gosh, you want to see the worst spot ever, because she was like looking up stuff on YouTube, and like, again, kind of like critiquing herself and looking at and having fun with it too. And she had never seen the Yeti choking Hogan, the Big
Oh
Show. and
no.
and I showed that to her, and I'm like, "You've never seen this?" It's like, "No." And I showed it to her, and we were just her laughing at it, and just like, "Am I really watching this?" Is her whole reaction. We were just busting up laughing the whole way there. And when we were in Vegas, just big hugs. And I would love to give a shout out to her. She's awesome. No pun intended, but she's awesome.
No, she is. And funny enough, let's see, where they filmed the Netflix series of Glow,
Yeah.
it's literally 3 blocks away from my house.
Okay. Are you
Right?
talking? What venue are you talking about? The
No, it's not a venue. It's a soundstage.
Oh, okay. Because
It's a
they also
soundstage. Yeah,
because they
and
also yeah. Sorry.
yeah, and the funny thing about it, I want to say the third or fourth episode in season one, where they're kind of like bring wrestling back and whatever, and it's
Yeah.
a bunch of the cast members. That was shot right outside my house, and it happened a day that I like. You could actually see my apartment building, and
What is?
there's a 1911 like right there. And my wife texts me, and she's like, "There's a wrestling thing happening, and they're filming like whatever." And I was like, "Well, how long are they going to be there for?" She asked somebody, and it was only for a couple more hours or whatever. But I was at work in Pasadena, and I was just like, "Damn it, damn it, damn it, damn it!" When wrestling comes to literally my street, you remember the old WrestleMania? The WrestleMania is coming to your town. Like
Yeah.
wrestling came to my damn street, and I couldn't answer the call.
you know,
That's
I mean, that just shows. Wow. Like like what a small world this is. You know, it's amazing. And I mean, I didn't can't compete with that story. I was just going to add to the fact that the Mayan theater was used for that, where they were going to set up their ring and all that, where Lucha Lagoon
yes,
does their shows. But no, I mean, what a small world. What a small world, you know,
yeah, yeah.
when something
I
like
mean,
that happens.
oh, I mean, it goes even further if you want to bring it full circle. That I did security for the first incarnation of WoW, which was after the first like female Dave McClain deal after Glow, right?
The
And
forum.
then some of my friends, like a Dagger and a Keita Rush, are a part of this incarnation of WoW. So
Interesting.
yeah,
Yeah, that was at the forum, the show that you and I were both at.
yeah,
Amazing. Yeah, no,
yeah,
it's a small community, professional wrestling, especially in a. I mean, pretty much you go to a show, you're gonna know anybody, and but totally different with your story. Like when they just happen to be filming something at your pad, you know, it's like these things you can't think like this is too coincidental. This must mean something, you know. Must mean
yeah. And
something.
I wasn't even doing podcasts. I was still a fan of all things combat sports. At that
Well,
juncture,
there you go. Like that again, it was like meant to be in the sense like something was telling you, like you belong in this business. You gotta like make the choice now to like giving you a little sign, a little nudge, a little flip of the switch to be like, hey, come on now. The rest is up to you, type thing. And
yeah,
I've gotten signs like that myself when I was younger. I'll tell you this. Like in the after high school, I was delivering pizzas, and I delivered pizzas for 2 years, and our pizza place closed down in like mid '90s, and then so I found another pizza joint a few miles away so I could keep delivering. I never got in one car accident in the 2.5 years I was delivering for Numero Uno Pizzeria, and I start working at this next place and I got one car accident. Then I had to borrow my family's car to continue working. I got another car accident like 2 weeks later, and the cars were totaled. And I'm lucky to be alive, right? But it was like I look back on all that now, and it was like something's telling me, "Hey, that's it. The pizza days are done, Kris. Like don't hold on to this. There's more things on the horizon for you." And sure enough, fast forward a couple years, I was got involved with wrestling and this and that and the other. Who knows if I would have kept doing that? Let's say there was an indie show or something to work and I couldn't go because I was working delivering, and I never would have gotten that opportunity. And I feel like whether it's tragic things or positive things, sometimes these things happen for us, in order to propel us to the next chapter that we're hesitant to open on our own. We have to open it on our own, but sometimes we get a little nudge in the sign so we can open it on our own. And as far as negative things happening, I love this quote: our greatest gifts are often cleverly disguised as our worst nightmares. So you can go through a nightmarish moment. You would never have wanted it to happen. I never would have wished this upon myself. But there's really a gift waiting on the other side of that we don't see in the moment. We're being kayfaved in the moment, right? But no, when I hear stuff like that with you and the filming and all that, and my story of like almost being killed twice, type thing, it's like I look back and it's like, that was synchronistic because this happened. There was a chain reaction and this and that and the other. So I'm a firm believer on things that do happen for us. And then after that, it's not pre-written. It's up to us to choose what to do after that sign came in. Sometimes we repeat this over and over because we choose not to see the sign. But no, that's a cool story because I think that was something for you to see, to be like, oh, you know what? There's something here. So it's very cool.
yeah, and a lot of times, wrestling was the thing that kept me sane, in the wild world of professional wrestling. But
Ditto.
yeah. So I mean, grew up in San Francisco. We moved to Fiji for a bit, came back to San Francisco, then Indiana, Las Vegas, New Mexico, Georgia, and then Inglewood in '95, sounding like this. Like that was a rough go. I mean, but no matter where in the world I was, I knew that I could tune into pro wrestling either on Saturday mornings or at the very least renting a tape, from the grocery store at times, for a buck, 50 cents and what have you, and replaying
Yeah.
WrestleMania 1 through 10, and
Right.
just having that and knowing that, to me, the catch wrestlers, the Hearts, the ones out of Calgary, right? They were the most legit shooters of them all. And then when Dan Severn comes to the WWF and ragdolls Owen on Shotgun Saturday Night, my world was changed.
Mhm.
So if not for those things,
Yeah.
I don't even think. I mean, whether it be pro wrestling, whether it be pro MMA, I don't think I would be doing it either.
And speaking like when you say moving to Inglewood sounding like this, when you say that, it just reminds me of like when I got first into this business, you had all these walks of life, different nationalities, different everything. But once you start as a group, really becomes a family, start talking about this one common denominator that everybody gets everybody, it just takes all those boundaries away, which are an illusion in the beginning anyway. And you have so much in common that you don't even see what the rest of the real world is focused on, of differences with people, that it really brings people together, especially when you're on that same wavelength, and so that was one thing when I got into the white boy, from Woodland Hills, and I'm talking to this was formerly a gangster, whoever, in East LA, but we're just talking wrestling, 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 and we're all doing that, right? So it really becomes this family, um, through this common denominator of what we all basically just become our kid self again. We all become like the 10, 12, 8 year old us, and then as in the bodies of 20, 30, 40 somethings, we're communicating as these similar 9 year olds or whatever, and nothing beats that. And what is one of the greatest ways, the catalysts to get to that point, at least for us who love this, is professional wrestling. So I in so many ways, you're right, it's a lifesaver in so many ways, and ironic as it is, this insane thing brings sanity, so
No, and I think it mellows out the world. It's like like a calm ship in rough waters. Like, yes, the ship is massive and whatever, intimidating as it may be, but
yeah,
I mean, it's a thing that'll kind of get you through. To figure things out, and that is wrestling for me, and
me
you
too.
too.
Yeah, I think for most, that again, we all have to remember, like we were talking earlier, like best advice I can give is just don't take yourself too seriously. You're there to have fun. If you want to do this to be famous or anything like that, if that comes along with it, great, fine, wonderful. But to get into this industry, and I know a lot of people do, especially this day, but today, but you're really not going to enjoy yourself as much in this business if you make it about yourself, because you have to look at pro wrestling, the locker room, even though there's opponents and heels and faces. At the end of the day, it's no different than you are all one football team in the NFL. You're a team versus that team over there. But make no mistake, you're in a team or family, whatever you want to call it. And it's so easy, which bugs me about the business, when there's drama, when there's all this stuff. I never understood that, because it's like, dude, we're back here, like this is a gift. We're all doing what we love, and we get to like be in this like fraternity that we're all like have this common denominator that brings us together. Like, why would, if you're going to have drama here, dude, you're going to have drama anywhere. Imagine a
Everywhere.
job you imagine a job you don't want to be at, and you're going to have drama here, then you're for sure going to have drama there. So don't blame it on anybody else. Quit the victim mentality, and just let go of the drama and all the like putting yourself over just because it has nothing to do with the show. Just remember what the kid in you would want you to do, not the ego self of you today would want to do necessarily. I mean, look, we all have one. Everyone's got an ego. Everyone's got one. And it's up to us to be the governor of the ego, as opposed to letting the ego be the governor of us, right? We all have one.
Yeah, and it's just keeping it in check. I think the best way to equate it was the I think it's Mr. Deeds, the Adam Sandler movie, where they're talking about the companies getting kind of sold off and whatever, and there's a boardroom, and Adam Sandler has to speak his piece, right? And he goes up and he's like, "What did you want to be when you grew up?" And he asks
Yeah.
this kind of
Mhm.
Colonel Sanders, kind of Texas oil tycoon
Yeah, yeah, yeah,
looking dude,
yeah.
and what did you want to be? And he's like, "I wanted to be a veterinarian." what do you do now? Well, own the largest slaughterhouse in the state of Texas.
Right,
And it's like,
right.
whoa, that's kind of a departure. The 7-year-old you would kick your ass right now.
Yeah,
So
right.
that's
Yeah,
kind of the rubric of like, I want the 7-year-old me to be proud of the 30-something-year-old
yeah.
me.
And keep in mind, I'm not like cross-legged on a mountain sitting here like I get it and I never made. No, I'm saying this because I wrestle, no pun intended, but I wrestle with this too, and I go through it like I got one, you got one, everyone's got an ego, and everyone's got a critic inside their head, and it's not about fighting it. It's about just talking to it like a child that misbehaves. You're not going to shun or kick that kid. You're going to talk to it. No, you don't have to go that route. I'm going to take charge right now. I'm not going to allow you to take charge. I'll have the ego. Everyone's got one. We all do, man. It's an ongoing practice in life, and what better place to practice that than at the thing that you love to do, which is fucking professional wrestling, man. It's an honor. It's a privilege to be back behind that curtain. I don't care if they say kayfabe is dead, whatever. It's still an honor and a privilege, because you know what? As much as like people get wrestling, there is still an audience of children out there that believe in it, just like they believe in Santa Claus. You're not going to tell them like there's no Santa or whatever. So you're going to go out there, and it's an honor and a privilege for you to be a part of this and to entertain those people just the way you got to give back, because you were entertained once by that too. Like, man, how see, to me, I remember when I was in the audience, right? And I get a kick out of as much as I could possibly do to make that kid in the audience feel the same way I felt when I was that age. That's an honor, man. That's like, oh my gosh, that I can't believe I get to do this, what those guys were doing for me back then, you know. Well, and then like I said, it doesn't have to be wrestling. Like, as an announcer, if you want to become a wrestling announcer and all that, study up the guys, but also learn what they did, how you were looking at those guys and what they were saying and how that sold you on the product. And again, just always remember that you should be happy doing what you love. There's no reason why not to be.
No, 100%, which I gotta ask. I mean, you've been a part of so many incredible moments, both as a fan and as somebody in the industry working for professional wrestling. So, do you have a favorite moment that you've been a part of, either
Oh,
as a fan or as an announcer?
um oh wow. um
You can do memories. That's fine.
yeah, I was a fan. I was kind of like the one I told you, where I was at the sports arena, and I realized why I wanted to be in the business, and I appreciated it so much even before being in the business, for what the business does and offers. Um, uh, oh man, I just understanding how the production worked, getting on TV back before I was in the business. I know you saw a couple of those matches. When like Roddy Piper, working with him, it was like when the first show at the LA Sports Arena, Sabu versus Terry Funk. Go Funk Yourself. XPW's Go Funk Yourself. And we were doing radio XPW at the time, or internet radio XPW. And we were calling the matches on the platform that was actually left there by the last concert. They never took the platform down at the end next to the aisleway. So Sabu and Terry Funk came up and started fighting.
I
And,
remember.
and yeah, and Terry Funk grabbed me, not planned, not nothing. And dude, when Terry Funk starts working, even us in the back, we don't know what's real and what's not. And I'm telling you, straight laced right now, none of us realized it, because he would just turn it on, dude, and he would not turn it off ever until like he was basically home or out of the arena, right? And he came up and they were fighting, and they slam on the announce table, and Sabu goes flying, and I'm getting in front of Sabu and Terry just grabbed me. I'm like, I'm gonna get fucked up. This is it. Like I am going down. Like, and he swings, hits me, It looked so stiff. It looked so real. He took care of me like you have no idea. And that was the first time ever in my career that I was involved in an angle where a wrestler attacked me, and it was by Terry Funk.
Funk.
Yeah, that was the first time it ever happened. Like, as the announcer gets in trouble or a ref bump, like something like that, ever. And it was with him. And I just remember I was again honored, man. Like you picked me to hit, like type thing. There were a few moments like that, but it was so hard to top that one after it happened. It kind of didn't get topped really, as far as like me being involved in an angle. There were some cool things, but that was the first, and like they always say, the first time is the best, right? So
Yes.
so this really was the first time. And I remember thinking that after, like, where can I go from here, man? Like, how can I top this, and sure enough, in a way, it hasn't been topped. And that was the first time back in 2000, Sports Arena, 20 years ago. Unbelievable.
Holy shit! Has it been that long?
20 years. That was the year 2000. That was, I think, July. So we're just past the 20-year point. Yeah. Amazing. And it
I
seems
still
like
remember.
yesterday, man.
I still remember, especially that setup. I mean, I remember Abdullah coming out.
That was
And,
the next show at D-Day, I believe. Or no, yeah, he came out and then he wrestled the next show at the
right,
sports. Mm-hmm.
right. That was the reveal. I forgot who. It might have been Rob. I can't remember who exactly brought him out, but I mean,
Yeah, I think he was like the bad guy in the Black Army and all that.
yes, yes, the Black
And
Army.
yeah, because he fought Sabu at the last
Yes,
show, next show, and Sabu was anti-Black Army and with Josh Lazy, and so I guess
right.
technically Terry Funk was in the Black Army.
Technically, which is weird to think about, but in
Yeah,
context, yeah. I mean, it made sense then.
yeah, because I think that was the big swerve job, because like everybody was just expecting, whoa, Terry Funk, you just had this idea of this legend coming in, and the fans were cheering him. So that was like the last guy you would think that would swerve into the heel Black Army, and I remember that we all got, because I didn't know I liked going into matches not necessarily knowing what was going on. Like I wanted, there were some times where you needed to know in post production so you could really put the story over. Like I don't know if you remember Damage Incorporated at the Grand
Yes,
Olympic, and that was the one when I thought it was brilliant how they pulled this off when Rob Black went against Sabu and Josh Lazy, and then White Trash Johnny Webb came out in the same getup, and we thought it was Rob Black, and then Rob
yeah,
Black, the real one, gets thrown in by New Jack, and Rivera and I were like, "What? Hey, wait a minute! Wait
yeah.
just a
A
minute!
minute,
What
yeah.
are these men?" And then so matches like that, if you know what's going to happen, like it really helps to call that in post, because you can emphasize those moments, you know, and all that. But there's also an element that I liked when I would call it live and not know what's going to happen, because I wanted to naturally maybe feel a little bit more real in my emotions, right? It's kind of a catch 22. You have a
Yeah.
little bit of both. You have positives in both, you have negatives, potential negatives in both too. But something like that Damage Incorporated, I was like, I think this one we should call in post, because I want to get this just right, and even like when Webb came out, and it was really Webb, but we didn't know it wasn't Rob Black
Yes.
yet. We kept emphasizing his first and last name. And now Rob Black goes down. Now Rob Black. So we're subconsciously getting it into the heads like it is Rob Black, him and only him that's in the ring. We're not saying Black or Rob or now a leg drop. We always emphasize first and last name, while it was Webb. So
Yeah.
so the psychology was like you wouldn't even think twice to think this was somebody else, right? And then when he gets thrown back in the ring, we're just like, huh? Wait, you two? Wait, oh, and then this room. Wait a minute, I got it, type thing. And but like a Vic Grimes and New Jack, dude, and Supreme being on fire, like, oh my gosh, like, dude, I don't think there's any other way to call that but live. Dude, it was like, I to this day, man, I get chills thinking about that, because I remember how I felt like when Grimes came down. I was legitimately like, I am not Kris Kloss, the guy calling matches. I'm Kris Kloss, the real person now watching this. There was no room for me to be this character anymore as the announcer, right? That was me. Like, I don't know if this guy's dead right now or if he's going to die. There's no way for me to just continue doing announcer guy anymore, you know?
Yeah.
So that one we just called live, and I remember I did this. I knew he was coming down, so I did that trademark scream. But like halfway through the scream, I'm like kind of really screaming at that point. Like I'm like I start to do it as because I know I'm going to do it, but then like I hear my voice when I hear that again, and I know like at the end I'm like, ah shit, like what's going to fucking happen, you know?
Yeah.
And I was just that was it. And I was we don't need to say anything now. There's no reason to say. And we all saw what happened. Just throw the headphones down and just kind of like go over there as close as I could where we're at the broadcast booth and just hope to God this guy's alive, right? And he's not like paralyzed or something like that. Dude, he's so lucky. So I can't tell you to this day how lucky that guy was.
I don't know how. I just, and especially, I mean, you don't have to read between the lines because, I mean, you can go to New Jack, he'll tell you he stunned him with a dang stun gun, and then threw him over. And he was just like, just end up in the ring, right? And he bounced, like, oh, bounce off the rope, kind of backflip, just
Yeah,
gnarly.
and he didn't even hit. He like clipped those tables that were like
Yes.
4 across and 4 up. Like that was a pretty big target, and he didn't. He barely skimmed it. You know. Luckily, he did though, because that maybe slowed him down or inched him toward the rope. Because half a foot or quarter of a foot more out, he was on the concrete.
Yes.
He was on the concrete, and not only that, but if you go any farther, you could have landed on the guard railing, or you could have landed on the first
Okay.
3, 4, 5 rows of
5 rows,
people,
yeah.
and that floor was full of people. You know, so I mean, there are some. I mean, there are some. I know you witnessed all this too. Like it was all
Yes.
documented, but I don't know. I remember when that event happened, it was like something was in the air, and I felt like this is like whether it was dark or not. This was a monumental moment. Is as eerie and effed up as it was like you knew in the air like there's horrible things in history and there's wonderful things in history, and whether it was horrible or not, it was historic, and you knew it in that moment. It was something was electric and thick in the air, man. And it's still people talk about it to this day, man. It was on the freaking Vice, and it was and all that. So crazy. It's crazy.
Oh, and that's also how you know a wrestling fan and who's a fan of what era or what type of wrestling, because a lot of people will bring up Foley, right?
Yeah.
And the Hell in the Cell, right? But I mean the gnarlier one, that's Vic Grimes all day, all
I
day.
think I think too, like most people that work in the business will still say that too. I mean, I don't know, maybe Mick Foley will even say that himself. I don't want to speak for him, but there are guys like Ryan Katz, GQ Money was talking all about how Drew McIntyre loves hearing about XPW stories, and he was a big XPW Mark fan,
Mhm.
and we're all Marks, right? We're all Marks, but
Yeah.
yeah, but that's not a put down whatsoever. I'm a Mark. We're all Marks, but so a guy like that who knows the history and all that. The thing is, though, you're never going to hear anybody talk about them knowing the history of an XPW or something like that. So people are definitely out there. And then look, I get messages on Facebook, Twitter, and then even the YouTube comments, those people can be anybody. Those people can be anybody prominent that we know of. And I won't name names, but there have been a couple that I have found out that are prominent players in the industry, and that just like, whoa, what was it like, this and that. It's like, wow,
Yeah.
this guy's asking me that. Like, well, that's kind of cool. But and then I take it again. I take a step back as a fan in that moment. It's like, well, yeah, this is wrestling. Like we're a part of this, and anybody can end up anywhere in this industry. But we all have that same uh, the psyche, that our perceptions because of what we saw back in the day. So
What?
it's out there. People are, believe me, people still ask me, people still talk about it, people still want to know this and that. So the intrigue is definitely there. And again, like I said, could be anybody asking me this.
Well, I mean, if it's you guys worked us all. I mean, that good,
Well,
bad, and
that was no
indifferent.
work. The Vic
That
Grimes
was
was no
cheap as
work.
fuck. Yeah, no,
That
100%.
was, yeah, that was no work, man. That, and neither was Supreme getting lit on fire at the Olympic at XPW's Rapture. That was a crazy show, Rapture. But but that was when they put too much fluid on and they lit it right before he hit the table. So there was so much that fluid that hadn't burnt yet. And they just executed it wrong. And oh my gosh, dude, that was scary, man. And you can smell the burnt flesh in the building. Like where we were sitting, we were halfway up at the Olympic, same place where Joey Styles and Joel Gertner were for Heatwave, for the announce area. That's where we announced. We were, and that's in the loge section. Like we were almost like underneath the top of the arena. And I'm not kidding, dude. Like you could smell the burnt flesh in that whole entire arena when he got lit up. And they took him straight to the emergency ward, and they put him in a burn ward where they stick him in like basically a walk-in freezer.
Yeah.
Yeah, they did that. And so like that's how bad the burns were. And dude, I'm not kidding. Like even after he was gone and the event was over, you could still smell that burnt flesh. So dude, there were some legitimate instances in that company that totally pushed the envelope. There were some times where I was even asking myself, like, what am I doing? What are we doing here? Like, I mean, look, I was all in with XPW. I was all in. If I'm gonna do something, I'm gonna be loyal, right? And I that was XPW. That was like all of our babies, right? We were all like in our own way, and I believed in that company. And but there were those moments where we're pushing the envelope, and it's like we didn't agree with everything they did, but guess what, this is your opportunity. You're in professional wrestling. If you don't agree with everything that's going on here, you're never going to make everybody happy. And everything that you see, you're not going to agree with everything. So now you still have that opportunity to put your stamp on this thing, to put your twist on this thing, that you can take from something that you grew up with, out of your psyche, for your perceptions, and deliver it to this thing that you can maybe think in your own way you can improve on. So you got to look at that with the glass half full versus, I don't like what this is happening here. Well, guess what? You're never going to like everything. And just like no one's always going to approve of everything that you do, you know?
Right.
So no, man, you gotta if you're working somewhere and you don't like something that's going on, instead of complain about it and be a victim, don't complain about the negative. Add something that's positive from yourself to that what you think is a negative, right? And so I loved everything XPW did. Not everything, but most I did. But for the things I didn't like, well, hey, this is my opportunity now to put my slant on this instead of just complain about what I'm not liking or don't agree with, whatever. It's not like, don't sweat the small stuff. Life's too short, and this is you're here doing what you love. Try to look at that part of it and go from that level of yourself.
100%. And it's even just looking at it now, that Supreme Bird. Oh, it's cringy now. I could only imagine what it must be to have been there. Oh, it's nuts.
That was, yeah. I don't know what was. They were just apples and oranges as far as what was worse, Grimes or so. They were rotten apples and rotten oranges, of like they're just different, But XPW, man, that was XPW. XPW pushed the envelope, and that's why when we went to MTV, it was like, guys, we got a major platform to do what we want, but it's going to be watered down from XPW. It don't expect like we're going to do some cool things, but it's going to be a little polished around here, and MTV is going to make sure that happens. It's such a double-edged sword with television. You got great platform, we're worldwide. But the freedom is not quite exhibited here as much. There was total freedom in XPW, total freedom.
Yeah, and sometimes freedom. Oof, you got to make sacrifices, and damn it, look at Supreme's body after. Oh,
Yeah, I know.
oh.
But if it wasn't in XPW, he would have been doing that on the indie circuit anyway. That was his choice, and that's the way he wanted to live his life.
Yeah,
And he is a legend in death matches because of that. And he wouldn't have wanted it any other way. He wouldn't have traded that night at Rapture. He wouldn't have traded all those injuries for the mark he made. He wouldn't have. He would have said, I'll do it. I guarantee you what I think about Lester is that he would have, I think he would sit here and say, I wouldn't change a damn thing. I think he would say, I wouldn't change a damn thing. Scars and all, he would not change a damn thing. I can tell you that right now. No way. No freaking way. That's my opinion, but I don't think it. I know it, man. I know it.
I love it. Just somebody who gave so unselfishly to the business. That's amazing. And somebody that hasn't, I mean, that has given themselves to the business is you. So, dude, I so appreciate you,
Oh, I
for
appreciate that
doing
means
this
a lot.
because again, if not for you, I don't no, I know I wouldn't be here. So,
Well, that means a lot, man. I don't, I can't even relate to that, but that means a lot. And thank you. I thank you, man. Yeah. I mean, it
it
means
is
a
it,
lot.
it is the absolute truth, my man. And for those who want to check out what you're doing, the life and times of the one and only Kris Kloss, where can they find you?
At the Kris Kloss at Twitter, and then just search Kris Kloss on Facebook. Shoot me a message. Any other questions that I didn't answer, let me know, and I'll be more than happy to answer them. I don't mind, and I enjoy sharing these stories, especially when people want to hear them and ask me these questions. And so I hope I answered. I mean, there were a ton of questions about Freefall. There were a ton of questions about Rapture. There were tons of questions about the backstage stuff in XPW. There were some questions about the differences of WSX and XPW. So, and how some of these guys were Roddy Piper, of course, Terry Funk, Shane Douglas. So I hope I answered enough of these
You
questions,
did.
hopefully all of them. And
But there's also, if they want to hear extended stories of all things XPW, there is a place that you can find that. And where's that place?
that's true. You go to the Wrestling Chatter channel on YouTube and subscribe to them. And don't forget, I don't know if you guys, did you subscribe yet to this one? You haven't? Well, subscribe right now. Yes, subscribe to According to Woods, and go also to the Wrestling Chatter channel on the 15th and 30th of every month. We're going to be doing Xtreme Memories, everything XPW. So far, we've had Kevin Kleinrock on. We've had Ryan Katz, GQ Money from WWE, now NXT. We had Joey Chaos, of course, Chaos Rock Superstar, who's now heading the Santino Brothers Wrestling Academy. And we're going to have another guest coming up, again, the 15th and 30th of every month. on Xtreme Memories with Kris Kloss, and we're gonna have another guest. Can't reveal who that is yet, but it's gonna be a big one. And again, just go to the Wrestling Chatter channel on YouTube and hit that subscribe, and then you're going to be notified when these episodes come up. Just as a reminder, the 15th and 30th of every month.
Damn right, dude. I'm subscribed. You guys should be too. It's all things XEW, you know. And George Hermosa says, keep it going, and we will keep it going right on to the wrestling chatter. So I know you've subscribed, and if you haven't, George Hermosa, subscribe to the wrestling chatter, my man. But Kloss, dude, it's been
Yeah.
amazing. And I mean, we could probably do another 4 hours, but
You know
before
what?
we
It's. I knew we were going to go long, but that's if people are this interested, they want to watch, then great, and I really appreciate that. And like I said, if there's any other questions, just go ahead and contact us at the Kris Kloss at Twitter, Kris Kloss on Facebook, and you know, don't be shy. Um, uh, and just ask away. You know, ask away, and we'll see you on the 15th and 30th of every month for Xtreme Memories with Kris Kloss on the Wrestling Chatter channel.
damn right.
And thank you,
Well,
Adam. Thank you, and everybody at According to Woods channel. Thanks for having me. And you know, just freestyling. I love this. Not only XPW, but just freestyling. I really appreciate it. I didn't know we were going to get into this tonight as extensively as we did. Just the history of professional wrestling and in the history of sports venues and all this for Southern California. It's always interesting to me. And if anybody wants to hear more extensive stuff with the lawyer I was involved with the LA Sports Arena, it's kind of an interesting story about that. I basically laid it all out right there, but we were almost instrumental, believe it or not, we were almost instrumental in saving the LA Sports Arena as an historic landmark. I hate talking about it almost now because it didn't happen, but we were spearheading that for a little while there, and it got cut off. But we tried, man.
I love it. I love it. But you're a huge lineage of SoCal wrestling history. And again, I appreciate you coming
Thank you,
on and paving the way.
thank you, Adam. I appreciate it. You too, man. Really do.
And this has been According to Woods with the one and only Kris Kloss. And if you haven't already done so, like, share, and subscribe to the According to Woods channel. But we are out.